He told her that he was stuck on an unknown island, and she was standing by the fireplace in a room with food and a sleeping cat. 3 friends enjoy food and drinks in a cozy room. One of them holds a plate of meat and bread, and the other raises a mug of beer. She says she doesn't want to eat sweets, and he remembers that his sister always pestered him under the pretext of fairness. She says that his aunt will be upset with him and asks him not to be so picky. He offered her to eat the sweets himself, but she silently refused, and he thought that she didn't even intend to eat them. He says she always forced others to do her work using fairness and doesn't want to live with her anymore. He asked how much longer they would have to wait, and she sighed and expressed impatience during the trip. He angrily asked her to shut up and stop annoying him, and then ordered her to sit quietly where she was. He says that after getting her license, she constantly asks to be driven here and there, and then someone sighs that it was tiring. He lists the things, and the girl with long hair smiles and asks which bag has the cake, and another one asks if he can lift the heaviest one. 2 boys are discussing the fact that there are a lot of things in the bag, and the girl suggests going ahead. He held himself in the car and is now confident that he can handle it, and the other one said with a smile that it would be better for him to carry the load alone. He thinks that by entering a university in another prefecture he will be freed from this infection, while the other one screams in horror. He heard a sound and, turning around, asked in surprise what was happening, being in the forest with a backpack on his back. He was surprised to find himself in the woods, even though he remembered being in the parking lot. He asked in surprise where the car was, noticing its absence, and then thought in the silence under the trees. He asks in surprise where everyone is and wonders if he dreamed all this, standing alone in nature with his camping gear. He is worried and thinks that if he goes down the mountain he will be able to see the city, but notices that there is no signal on the phone. He walks along a forest path with a backpack and a pipe on his back, looking around carefully. He sits by the river bank and admires the beauty of nature, deciding to wait a little longer. He, tired and puzzled, stands by the sea and wonders why he has not met a single person and there is no city or inhabitants nearby. He listens to the sounds of sleep nearby with surprise and slight anxiety. He eats from the box and thinks it's a good thing he brought a fridge because he has water, tea, cola, snacks, and a bento for 4 people. He is surprised by the lack of trash on the beach and decides to quickly prepare everything for the night, worrying whether he will be able to return before sunset. The image shows the sky with clouds and treetops. He sits on the ground and says that it was not for nothing that he took the knife with him, explaining that it was because of his sister that he had to go to the fireworks show. He is tired and can't make a fire, regretting that he put off the survival program, even though a friend invited him to go camping. He noticed the smoke and thought it would soon become completely dark, so he decided to hurry. He blows on the fire and decides that's enough, while the fire quietly crackles against the backdrop of the night forest. He is tired and glad that he prepared himself so as not to catch a cold, and thinks that the dream will soon end. He decided to go the other way to see the city and noted that he needed to collect branches for a fire later, although he was bitten by insects. He looks up in surprise and fear and thinks that this is the same. He stands on the edge of a cliff and thinks that there is also a sea here, which means he is on an island. He reflects on the impossibility of sailing away from the islands and calls out loudly, asking if there is anyone nearby. He sits on the grass by the tree and asks himself why this happened, while someone approaches him. He stands at the waterfall and notices the source of the river, marveling at the beauty of this place on the island. He found a source of water and decided to collect branches, hoping that someone would notice the smoke from the fire. He realizes that he is stuck for a long time and decides to make himself a proper shelter by sawing and driving pegs into the ground. He wondered whether the structure would be stable or whether it would be worth reinforcing with stone and mud. He's thinking about his last bento and the upcoming food hunt when he notices something unexpected around the corner of the house. He thinks about possible animals and says that there is no time to delay in strengthening the walls, then sighs and thinks about washing himself. He fishes in calm water and is pleased with his catch, noting that it is much easier to catch fish here. He eats fish by the fire and thinks that it is completely tasteless and wants salt. He reflects on the lack of water, deciding to strengthen the house and gradually get used to drinking water from the spring. He, tired, put his hand on his forehead and noted that he was doing quite well. He explains that he made the roof out of leaves and branches and suggests using plastic bags for the windows since it's a bit dark inside the house. He dug a drain to keep the rain out and noticed a rock that could be heated and used as a heater on cold nights. He suggests using bath water and agrees that even a small amount will be enough. He noticed that the leaves were starting to turn yellow and was glad that he was able to take a bath. But he was also unsure if it was too cold. He is happy that he was able to make a small pot and can now eat stewed food, noting that he has more choice in food. It started to snow, gradually covering the mountain before he could do anything. He thought about the edibility of the mushrooms and decided to go home quickly, despite the snow and cold in the forest. He sits by the fire and wonders if he is destined to die like this. He asks thoughtfully, being all alone, and then with surprise notices a flying light and hears a cry of regret. He is surprised and asks, "What?" And she apologizes, explaining that she didn't know about his call. He was surprised to notice the appearance of a ball of light and heard that he had accidentally fallen under the call of heroes and was now in another world. He asks in surprise about the summoning of heroes, and the other asks to return it, but is refused. He panics and explains that he shouldn't have died, and his interlocutor is surprised and asks if this is really another world. He is confused and asks where he ended up. He smiles, playing with the dog in his arms, and a girl with a flower in her hair watches them with interest. He asks in surprise if this means they have entered a world of sword and magic. He doubts the truth of what was said and reasons that there were no monsters or entrance to the labyrinth in the mountains, asking if it was a spirit. He explains that the summoning of heroes connects the two worlds, but the divine energy has been exhausted and will soon be restored. He was surprised to learn that his sister had become a hero, and he thought that 3 people before death, 3, that's right, maybe he too was on the brink of death. He reflects thoughtfully on how he should have stayed alive and notes that the world around him is too noisy. He is surprised, and 3 girls, one of whom has long dark hair, look at him with varying degrees of interest and surprise. He stands with his back to him, and 4 others look at him intently on a snowy night. He asks in panic why this is necessary, and the other one replies that it doesn't matter anymore. He says that they will first listen to the other person's wishes, but the other person asks to wait, explaining that it was an accident. He and she are surprised by the appearance of an animal that suddenly growls at them. He explained that Rich had failed and more energy had gone into the connection, so the scope of the call had expanded. The young man denies guilt, the old woman asks who he will choose, and the woman says that now is not the time. He explains that since the hero cannot return to his home world, he will be given the choice of a patron god, usually the summoning deity. He listens as Wang explains his specialization in strength and fire, as well as his abilities of destruction and regeneration. 3 introduced themselves. One said he had water and healing, another said he had earth and silence, and the third called himself Catter and spoke about plants and order. 3 characters introduced themselves. One says that he is the earth and the harvest, another says that he is light, love, and beauty, and the third says that he is light, wind, love, and desires. He angrily asks the glowing ball to shut up while they explain that Rich has lost most of his power and is unable to help due to a lack of energy. He asked if the power would be restored, to which the girl replied that everything has a beginning and an end, and they are strong enough to be called gods. He thoughtfully asked who would be chosen, and in response he heard the question whether it was possible to choose everyone. The man explains that their powers contradict each other and the transfer of power will be weak, and the young man listens and understands that compromise is impossible. She explains that Pal will have friendship and Caliph will have obsession, and he thinks about the complexity of the situation. A man with a long beard says that they will help you choose the right skills in this world if you think about what you want to do. He reflects on his desire to live comfortably and stay away from his sister, listening to the old man's words about freedom from unnecessary ties. The young man said he wanted the power to travel freely, and the old man asked if he wanted to interact with the hero. He asks in surprise if his sister has received abilities, and the elder explains that strength increases with the use of gifts and abilities. He becomes acutely aware of the power of full magic and dominance and decides to have nothing more to do with her. He extends his hand and says that these are the skills she will receive. The old man lists the skills and asks if a build like this with the freedom, bond break, and hero killer skills would be suitable. He explains that he doesn't want to get involved with her, and the other person confirms this with a short, yes. He received the sword with a warning that he would be lost in this world without it, and learned that the blade could cut through most materials. He received a bag of a substance that accelerates plant growth and will move with him, thanking him for his help. He sighed, and the old man thanked him for not complaining about being transported to another world without asking. He asked if he could take the puppy with him, and she explained that Rich had gone blind and lost his strength, but he said he wouldn't mind meeting him. He says that this is a parting gift and will send the interlocutor to a comfortable and safe home, warning about the possible incompatibility of the received abilities. He stands in front of a big house and thinks about the desire to live comfortably in a place where he will. He thinks to himself in surprise, expressing his amazement with the words, "Wow!" Landscape with a road leading to a village with mountains and forest in the background under a cloudy sky. He looks at the beautiful landscape with houses at the foot of the mountain and notices that it looks more like a mansion than an ordinary house, despite the winter. He, holding the cat, looks in surprise in the mirror and asks what's wrong with his face. He reflects on the new face, which is a symbiosis of 3 young people, and thanks them for it, feeling like their son. He opened the door in surprise and asked if anyone was sleeping after hearing a noise behind it. He, holding the kitten, noticed the stairs in surprise and said, "Wow!" He looked around the room and noted that it was very spacious. He asked in surprise what was there and noticed a storehouse that would never run dry. He, holding the cat, is surprised by the abundance of food and asks if this is a portal to Japan, noticing the fish in the barrel and listing the ingredients. He remembers the meager rations on the island and decides to take a bath first, unable to look calmly at food. He floats relaxed in the bath and wonders when was the last time he took a proper bath. He asked what to cook for dinner and inquired about his skills, and the interlocutor replied that he would look into it. He looks carefully and thinks about the assessment. He explains that a gate must be opened to start the water wheel and is delighted that he now knows how to use the mechanism to polish rice. He thinks about what Van said Rich can only give himself, and now he has become his protector. Perhaps he will recover with the help of his power. He says he'll bring meat as soon as she gets better, while someone cooks food and chops cabbage. A piece of bread is being fried in a frying pan. The sound of toasting is clearly audible. He cooks steak with cabbage and admits it's a strange combination, but he wants to try it. He noted that one could smell fish and crabs despite the darkness around. He folded his hands and wished them a bon appetit before serving the hot food. He tries the meat and says with delight that it is very tasty. He tastes the cabbage thoughtfully and notes that the salt and pepper go well with the sauce and freshly cooked rice. He sits at the table and quietly says that this is heavenly pleasure. He lies on the bed and thinks that he left the fire in the stove and did not check the locks because he was too lazy to go and no one would get in. He wondered if he really had to live in this unknown world. He lies in a bed that is too soft and comfortable and complains that he can't sleep because he's not used to it. Jean with purple eyes looks away thoughtfully, and she with pigtails crosses her arms, expressing displeasure, while he is mentally going through the situation. He reflects on his week on the island, where he spent most of his time sleeping, and is now glad that he got the laundry done. He walks into the room and ponders the usefulness of displaying recipes to activate culinary skills and make cooking easier. He muses over the menu and suggests making ramen, while another notes that he has mackerel and seaweed, but they need to be dried. He says it's rice again today, and then he remarks that the wheat needs to be ground. He reflects on the gods giving him a map and money and suggests going to the market to buy flour and storage containers. He looks at the map and thinks about where to go next. He found the place recommended by the gods while looking at the map. He teleports and confirms with surprise that he is in front of the border town of Canaan. A group of people discuss how Canaan is located near a demonic forest and attracts adventurers where they can earn money by defeating monsters. He explains that he has the status of a free knight and advises registering with the Adventurers Guild to avoid paying a fee, but the guard demands identification and an entrance fee. He wondered if the clothes were worth it because of his new appearance, and she suggested they continue shopping, saying that it was a completely different matter. He looks at the fabric and thinks about the dog, noticing that the quality is not very good. He was surprised to learn that the money from the gods was a large sum, and assumed that his sister had received the same amount. He looks at the expensive bottle of potion with surprise and thinks that this is the same potion that is used in games. He stands at the butcher's counter, thinking the test has revealed dangerous bacteria, and wants to know the ingredients so he can try cooking the food himself. He noticed a beautiful grapevine and asked if he could buy farming tools there, after which he apologized and decided to take one of them. The young man asked if he could have a grapevine seedling, to which the old man replied that he had no objection and allowed him to take it, thanking him. The young man explained that he needed to buy a weapon, and the woman offered armor and asked if he was new to adventures. He is surprised that the metal heats up quickly in the summer, thanks the woman who answers please, and tries the first sword he comes across, feeling like he is in a game. He decided to buy a sword with grooming tools, a belt and 2 knives, noting that an attempt to use an appraisal was unsuccessful due to his poor knowledge of the weapon. He took a set of strong leather armor and a bag for monster carcasses, thinking that he needed a rest. He ponders his overnight stay and plans for tomorrow, noting that the city does not allow the use of teleporters and that the hotel gates are closed in the evening. The image shows a rustic house with a sky and trees in the background, with no visible characters. He asked to register him as an adventurer, to which the woman agreed. He wants to make a request right away, but they explain to her that she needs to wait until the card is ready or pay a registration fee. He reads records about the demon forest and is interested in monsters, and another man offers to accompany him to study the work of an adventurer. He introduced himself as Dean, explained that he had to train 5 new recruits, and warned that the person he was talking to would be the last one. He introduced himself as Jay, and another noted that the instructor with 2 silver stars came alone. He told Dean it was nice to meet you. She reproaches him for his willfulness, and he laughs and notes that they have the same names, to which he tried to quickly change his. He rudely told them to shut up, and Jean apologized and asked them to wait a minute, explaining that he didn't want to interfere in their problems. She explains that Chris will return tomorrow and will fulfill any request the aristocrat may have, and he remarks that relying too much on Chris is dangerous. The man explains that the guild must work together. The girl asks him to go to a meeting with her, and he asks her to stop abusing his younger sister's position. They turn to Kana in surprise, thank her and ask who is to blame for her being spoiled. The 3 discuss the selection of candidates for training, and she apologizes for her shameful behavior. Jean declined his request, and she was delighted and promised to find a suitable group for them, despite the awkwardness of their family ties. He says he wants to withdraw the request and doesn't need an escort, and she apologizes for the hassle and promises to return the money. He asks if he can take an adventurer's handbook instead of something, and is told that it is not necessary. He sighs and thinks that he can't stand this kind of relationship and is not going to get involved in it again, noticing how sisters love to pester their brothers. She explained that he was the only one who could see her, and that one could communicate with thoughts, like with spirits or guardians. He discovers that he can read minds, but only those that they want to show, and considers using this ability on his sister. He thanked her for the tip, and she smiled and laughed quietly. He decided to go alone, wondering if she would come to give advice if he used the ability. He received permission to pass and studies the manual, which talks about rabbit monsters with horns living near the demonic forest. He explains that weak monsters are called hornless because of their small horns, and is confident that with his current equipment he can handle hornless rabbits. He noticed that there was no one around and decided to take advantage of the moment by casting the Zanzikan spell. He noticed a rabbit approaching and said it was him, describing its size and the dark circles under its eyes. He deflects an attack from a creature with ears using a sword, looking focused and tense. He marvels at the beauty of the herb and notes the medicinal one, which he will put in storage, and then notices raspberries and currants in the forest, filled with gifts of nature. He looks at the spinning object in his hand in surprise and thinks that evaluation and storage are extremely useful skills. He looks at the mushrooms on the tree and says he saw them on the island, then is surprised that they are actually edible. He notices not a rabbit next to him, but a much more serious monster and reacts with alarm to its growl. He stands facing a huge roaring bear with a horn, preparing to attack. He looks forward thoughtfully, and the other one says with concern, watching him. He thought the sword could cut through everything easily, and she asked why he didn't use magic. He asks her not to appear suddenly, doubts the magic and warns her not to run in vain, and she apologizes and says that she will try, but she needs to find the monster. He remembered the search skill after the girl's hint and was surprised that he had received so many skills that he almost forgot about it. He asked her to provide the necessary attributes for magic, and she explained which elements could be used. He thinks intensely about what an image is needed and then casts the spell Wind Slash, creating a vortex of energy. He was glad that he succeeded, and she thanked Mishto for her help. She explains that there will be help from the spirits ahead and warns about the rarity of talent for magic, and he decides to sell the loot to the guild and go to the crows. He asked doubtfully if the creature would be able to get through. He politely asked to evaluate and buy the item, causing the other person to express surprise and excitement. He was surprised that they came in this form and noted that it was better than with their heads cut off. He explains that he used to be afraid of monster corpses, but now, thanks to mental resistance, he can handle it calmly, and the other one calls him to come here. He checks the skins and says they are safe and sound, and another offers to sell them to the trading guild, to which he replies that he has already been warned. He tells that in the guild there are a restless brother and sister, whose heads express surprise and excitement. He asks where he can learn to make potions, and another explains that it will take a quarter of an hour. He explained that potion recipes were sold in the adjacent department, and that training materials were only available to guild members, and advised contacting the alchemists. He asks if they can manage without him, and the other one confirms that he is ready, showing a book with the inscription, "Done." He studies the recipe and reflects that potion recipes seem easy, but the book has everything from culinary dishes to brick firing. He explained that he heals injuries with magic, but pretends to use potions, and another offered to look at the magic stone and buy tools along the way. He remembers what the reference book said about a magic stone, looking at the outstretched hand. He was surprised that the stone was so small, and another explained that red spinel is the most expensive color and congratulated him on the find. He asks if they will sell an item that can perform strong fire magic, and receives the answer that he can buy it since he already has magic. He decided to take a walk and eat before it got dark. He said wow in surprise as he watched the bustling market square filled with people shopping and chatting. The image shows different types of food, hot dogs, cheese, sausages, and bread on a table. He assesses a sandwich with sauerkraut, ham, and cheese, carefully watching the grilling process. He checked the sausage for harmful bacteria and decided to eat one, thinking about the calorie content for adventurers. He was surprised by the dried fruits and wondered whether they should be used for sweets or as a seasoning for meat dishes. He thought he was getting retro vibes from the old scales and asked the woman selling the product about brown sugar. He noticed the smell of sake and asked if he could drink alcohol, then expressed surprise at the crowd, noting that it was fun. He looks in surprise at the pork roast that is cooking over the fire. He thinks in surprise, and the seller asks if he puts anything in the bread, standing behind the counter with loaves and a pig carcass. He tries the sandwich, thinking it looks delicious and admires the taste, calling it super. He muses about the pig, while another notes that the pantry is all sorted and suggests a flavorful pork rind with stuffing instead of bread. He told Rich that he was at home and noticed that his stomach had become smaller on the island while sitting next to the lying animal. He explains that he hunted monsters and spent money on potions, trying to help a tired Rich, who lies in a basket and purrs. A good night was said against the backdrop of the night sky. He thinks about language skills and the desire to read books about this world, while noting the quality of the fabric and wishing bon appetit. He said that he would be leaving for the royal capital tomorrow, and then noted that it was very large. Jean asked about guide maps and guides, and the man explained that it was easier to go to the merchant guild for purchases and gave him a simple map. He explained that there were a lot of children in the square showing off the sights for a fee, and the other one thanked him and kept the change for himself. He advises to contact Leon if you see a guy with gray-blue hair. He said he understood with a short ponytail on the back of his head. He is surprised by the many small buildings and thinks that if he makes a mistake, he will simply run away to the capital of the neighboring kingdom. He looks at the square in front of an old building where several people are standing and talking. He asks if it's Leon and remembers that it's better to ask the guy with blue-gray hair. Two people stand next to each other, one looking forward with a slight smile, and the other holding a towel, watching him. He said he could give a tour, but Jean, with a menacing look, was surprised and suspected a deception, and his interlocutor tried to justify himself. He says that the circumstances are favorable and offers to show her the city, and she thinks that he is not so evil. He asked if there were any must-see places, and she replied that the best view was from the top of the citadel, but that ordinary people could not enter it. He hesitated when asked to recommend a clothing store or restaurant, and internally doubted whether he should reveal that he was not an ordinary person. He says it's too early for lunch and knows a popular clothing store here. He wonders why someone is making such a scary face as they walk along the pavement. He asked why the walls of the houses were connected, and another explained that this was how the walls and taxes within the city walls were divided. He asked what taxes there were, and Jean replied that there was a market tax, a transport tax, a municipal tax, and a glass tax. He is interested in the large building in the square, learning that glass windows are considered a luxury and are rarely found in poor houses. In a garden with many plants, he explains that clean water always flows there, and everything is done according to the spirit's wishes. He realized that spirits were worshipped there, and she said that he should have gone there in the first place and called his skills as a guide insufficient. The man asked the young lady if she was okay, and he was surprised by the appearance of a stranger. He was surprised by the butler who asked who the young lady was, and another explained that he had been his since childhood. The man explains that they are now being followed, addressing the man with the tail. He noticed the appearance of an unfamiliar Lilith, who warned them of danger and said that a carriage had been prepared for them to quickly leave the city. He says he's not going to run away, and the other one explains that it's just a strategic retreat, after which he suddenly grabs the girl's hand. The man reported that young Lady Lilith was injured, and she apologized and said that they could not wait. He is surprised by what is happening, and the woman demands an explanation as to why the potion was not used, while the man explains the impossibility of taking the property. He asked if anyone was hurt and suggested using a potion he had recently made, and she replied that they needed to leave to avoid attracting attention. Jean introduced himself and said that Mr. Leon had agreed to show him around the city, and she noted that someone was heading to Thame's store. She said, thoughtfully, and then another man suddenly grabbed her hand and offered her a ride. A man addresses a woman sitting on the floor as a young lady while two people watch and one of them tastes something doubtfully. He asked if it worked, and Jean replied that he wanted to try it on himself first, but didn't expect such a result. He responded modestly to the thanks, and one of the men expressed impatience to leave the clothing store despite the help. He asked where they were, another answered that they were inside the cart, and the third said that they were not guilty of anything and the younger brother was alive. A man is pulling a cart and exclaims, turning to Mrs. Adelheid. He asked Tame to prepare clothes for Jean, explaining that he had no time at all and noted that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Lilith apologized to Jean for interrupting the tour, handed him the ring and warned him to avoid them due to problems, leaving Taimu in charge. He agreed, and she asked why they called him young lady, and explained that Leora was called Leon here. He explains that it is actually a girl, Leora Adelheid, who many mistake for a boy because of her appearance and strength. A man apologized to Jean for the high prices of custom-made clothes, and a woman asked him to forgive her. He noticed that this was not a store, but a studio, and the girls began taking his measurements, offering to choose fabric and buttons. He sighs heavily and says that he is exhausted. He checks the contents of the bag and reflects that the search is useful for finding less popular places, making sure he hasn't forgotten anything. He says he found the sheets and bedspreads at a fabric store, but he'll have lunch first and then read a book at home. He decided to read some of the books he had bought, standing next to the cat, which he stroked affectionately. He reads a book by the window by candlelight and contemplates making a lamp using rapeseed oil and a mirror. She asks to wait, and he advises to think about magic and creates light with his finger. He was surprised at the convenience, and then thought that the day had been strange but useful, and that the young lady with the stern face had turned out to be a good person. He looks out the window thoughtfully and says that he doesn't know how they are doing, but he hopes that she is okay. The image shows a dog sleeping in a basket on a stone surface. He calls Rich and tells him it's time to go home while he's digging through leaves outside. He is gradually recovering and becoming more confident walking the dog after several months of recovery. He says he has spent the last few months learning from farmers and carpenters, and then approves of the results of his work with canned goods. He considers setting up a laboratory and collecting materials, and also suggests planting a cork oak sapling. He adds growth powder to the plant and is surprised when the tree begins to grow rapidly and break branches. He stands by a large tree and marvels at the power he has already used on the vines. She reveals that the pink-haired sister from the Adventurers Guild is stalking her because of her work with the Merchant Guild. He decides to rent a house, thinking that buying household goods will be suspicious, and she is worried about it. Two men are discussing whether to open one of the doors. One of them asks how about this option. One noted the poor fit and cracks in the walls, while another explained that the building was new, cheap and safe, and that in this world old houses were worth more. He said he now has a house with teleportation capabilities and wants to gain useful knowledge, while the other agreed to help with carpentry, plastering, and cheese-making. He looks ahead warily, and she hides behind the wall and secretly watches him. The image shows snow-capped mountains against the sky and trees in the foreground. Jean says she's short on change, and he notices he's getting cold and doesn't know what to do. She called out loudly to get his attention. She warns him of the danger in the demon forest because of the cold, and he replies that he already knows. She asks him not to overdo it, reminding him that life is more important than money, and he assures her that he will not harm her, but suddenly she trips and falls. She complains that it hurts, and he asks if she's tired of it, watching her cry. He suddenly called out to another, who stopped in surprise at the castle wall. He explained that he would drop by the guild on the condition that the other kept his sister away and did not allow her to follow him and try to start a conversation. He asked if the other person was sure and remarked that his sister was a cutie. He irritably demands to take off the rose-colored glasses, suspecting that his interlocutor has a sister complex. He said that she had a disgusting character and she was not his type, and the interlocutor asked what kind of girls he liked then, since Amila was not suitable. He reflects on his sister's contrast and minimal makeup, while the other one reacts to his words with surprise. He thought he was on the wrong floor, but another offered to show him a place with rare herbs, and he agreed to go along. He approved, and the other noted that he was normal, despite his unhealthy attitude towards his sister. He examines the herb and explains that it is called kinka and is used to improve the smell of expensive alcohol, although it seems useless. They discuss a strange grassy smell and decide to catch rabbits for dinner, noting the quirks of the rich. He reflects that he can't travel home for lunch now and can't use the storage. He said the hunt was educational, and his interlocutor was surprised that he hunts bears, and he admitted that he relies on brute force. He stood up abruptly, noticing the approach, and the other looked at him in surprise. He was surprised by Leon's appearance and asked what he was doing there, and he apologized for surprising them. He said he was bear hunting and came for water, and the other thought it was not worth calling her by name if she was on the run. He asked if they knew each other, to which the other one answered in the affirmative and introduced himself as Dean, and the third one said his name was Ash and he was pleased to meet him. He apologized for not paying for the potion, and the other offered to eat better, noting that he had not noticed their suffering. Three men around a campfire discuss bear hunting and the high cost of housing in the area. He thinks that 1 gold per day is too expensive, while the other explains that the pink-haired receptionist recommended an inn with a bed and a desk. He thinks about the girl and says that Amila is just overworked, and the other one notes that their relationship looks creepy and asks why he turns off logic when talking about his sister. The man explains that Amila is very sweet and helps people, and Jean asks not to look at him with that expression. He says there is a spirit next to Amila and he is not sure if they will believe him. He explains that there is a mark of spirit influence on Mr. Dean's head, and the other one hears about it for the first time and is surprised. He asked if it was possible to see the mark of strong spirits, and Jean told him not to look at him so seriously. He explains that the flower looks artificial and asks to be allowed to take it from another man. He suddenly fell down, and she apologized for it, sitting next to him by the fire. He explains that the spirit lost consciousness due to the cessation of influence, and the other is surprised that they can not only be seen, but also touched. He says that this is the first time he has met someone with his father's level of abilities, and the other explains that only he and his father have seen spirits and he cannot touch them. He warns about the demand for the ability, and the other agrees, asking if he should be silenced. He jokes about a bear taking care of the body, then remarks that now someone knows they see these creatures. He says that he sees the man for the second time, and the other remarks that if he is left here, the bear will attack, and thinks that she is repeating her previous path. A small bird suddenly sits on the head of a large dog, attracting attention. He asked if it hurt, and she said it was a constant dull ache, and he was surprised that she called it that. He noticed a glowing strip around the bird's neck and thought it looked like a collar. He is surprised by the appearance of Lou's spirit, and the other character is dissatisfied with the result of the assessment. Two men around a fire discuss how their father bound a spirit to one of them at age 7 to make him a worthy heir, and wonder why his sister tolerated it. He is surprised, and she tells him that her father once got drunk and woke up with a woman who later delivered the baby to the house. He explains that in his country the firstborn is considered the heir regardless of gender, and his father attached a spirit to him for training, despite his gender. He doubts the need to impose masculinity, and the other asks not to say that they did not know the true purpose. He says it's impolite to poke one's nose into family matters, but one must get rid of the spirit, and the other agrees that even he is tired of it. He asked Jean if he could free the collar, and Jean said he didn't know and suggested trying to do it in the city. He admitted that he had spoiled her too much, and the other explained that he could no longer help himself because of the spirit of obsession. He explains that the guild will be angry if they find out about this, and the other asks to forgive him, but he replies that he is not offended. He recalls a place with a spirit branch, and the other says that he knows too little and it is better to remain silent, discussing that there is a branch in every city but the scale is different. One advises using carriers to hunt bears, while the other explains that he must return to the city and prepare. They discuss who is transporting the adventurer's loot, and one passes the other a note with the place and time of the meeting. He assures that he will not tell anyone about the ability to see and touch spirits, and the other says goodbye to him. He stands guard, protecting another from approaching wolves, and prepares to attack with his sword. He explained that Sir Jin's fighting style was fast and economical, and added that he should thank her while another person watched the fight. He explains that he can copy fighting techniques, but she thinks this is excessive and asks how they will travel. He noted that the taste was not bad, and another suggested a hot bath, adding that the renovation was not in vain, although the smell seemed like wolf meat. He explains that there is a bathhouse with a steam room nearby, but there are problems with hygiene there, and promises to get everything ready right now. He says the toilet is behind the door and he will be upstairs, then goes up the stairs, planning to teleport home and change clothes. He suggested they start, and she agreed, sitting on the bed next to him. He asked to take care of him while the bird was knocking its beak on another man's face. He noticed that the bird was unable to stop and suggested that if he could remove the collar, the situation would change. Jean suddenly hugs another man, who apologizes for the awkwardness, and he thinks he didn't feel anything. He gently called to Jean, who was lying in bed with his eyes closed and a small bird on the blanket. He asked to stop torturing the bird and said that it had done its job and could rest. He thought it was good that everything went smoothly, looking at the sleeping man with a bird on his shoulder. He reflects on the need to buy furniture for the 3rd floor and the fact that she might have to live there for a while. He takes a candle from the shelf, then approaches the sleeping person with a tray and at the end holds the folders, observing the surrounding people. He apologized for being less visible, petting his dog, Rich, outside his home with mountains in the background. He noticed that she still hadn't woken up. She called to Jean, who turned around in surprise, holding a small dog in his arms. She asked who it was and he asked if it was Ludera or Pal. He asked in surprise what brought them here, and the woman explained that the sister uses a lot of magic, which is why she behaves recklessly and does not see spirits. He asked in surprise about Namine, and the voice explained that the spirits had run out, but Namina had only become stronger. He reflects on the light, and she expresses concern about the dominance of her sister's spirits. She says that the spirits have become unbearably noisy, and he understands that Ludera is responsible for the silence, and the old woman warns of the consequences for many. He asked what the effect was and was told that he had not yet seen the spirits here, after which he was asked to look out the window. He snaps his fingers decisively and says he'll see what happens next. He is surprised by the amount of perfume and says that it is too much. He is surprised that he lived peacefully, unaware of his sister's dominance, and she explains that it affects everyone around him and asks what he should do. He says that we just need to give names to dispel dominance. She explains that entry into the house is prohibited without Jean's permission and suggests that everyone line up first. He lists colors and numbers as he watches the floating creatures and notes that 2 hours have passed. He tiredly laid his head on the table and said it was time to take a break. He decides to check on Ash, and she listens silently, leaning on the table. He said with relief that the escape was successful, and she asked in surprise who Ash was. He asks if Mishto followed him, and she laughs, after which he notices the spirit and calls him Ash. He reported that he had freed him from the spirit, but he still hadn't woken up. He looks at her in surprise, and she listens to his words with concern. She says it's a nightmare for the girl while he's still sleeping on the bed. She explains that she didn't intend to hit her, but he realized at first glance that it was a girl in front of him and notices something else. He understood the essence of the matter, and she was glad that now she would not wake up at night because of the toilet in her sleep. He asked what the baby's name was and learned that the previous contract had been broken, so he could give him a new name. He muses out loud about soft, fluffy feathers and admits that he's no good at coming up with names. He suggested option 3, and the bird showed approval, after which he noticed that he was pleased. He explains the meaning of the word Azuro and asks if she will stay with Ash, and she agrees, thinking about the long contract and the bird's possible loneliness. He offers to return and continue handing out names, and she agrees, while the old man thanks her for her help and notices the arrival of Katter and Ish. He says that the ball of light is over and she asks to wait, then he warns that in a month they may ask to do it again if the quantity increases. Jean shows a bright light that can be seen even with closed eyes, and others are surprised and say that they should have waited. He opened his eyes and was told that there were many light spirits here who had given him power, but he had to be careful with them. He was surprised, remembering that magic had worked fine before, and thought that Mishto had talked about the importance of imagery when using magic. He decided to have dinner and asked if the others wanted anything, observing their strange behavior while eating. He notices that salt is being released and the other asks if it is normal to eat so much salt and if it will harm his body. He was surprised that spirits could also eat, and she replied that strong humanoid spirits, although they do not feel taste, can do this. He explains that spirits feed in different ways and asks to wait until he finishes eating. He told that the wolf of darkness and ice was once his teacher, and asked what his interlocutor had plans for him. He was surprised by the plans, and she admitted that they can be suspicious and apologized, adding that the new rich looks nice. He talks about a dog that didn't listen to advice and acted on instinct, and the old man warns him to be careful. He was surprised when she said that he was very important to her, and then thanked him for his work and expressed hope for further support from the spirits. Jean noticed that the lone wolf wasn't pretending and decided to go take a bath before bed. He arrived at the pottery town to order a bath and decided to buy some pottery on the way back. Malcolm introduced himself and asked Jean if he had an idea for a new product, to which Jean replied that it was just a bathtub, not really an idea. He asked if the other was awake, who answered in the affirmative, lying in bed under the roof of the house at night. He suddenly noticed something and exclaimed in surprise. He asks if everything is okay and if it hurts, and the other one thanks him for his help, sitting in bed. He noted that his back was a little sore, and the other replied that it had been quite a long sleep and asked whether it was morning or evening. He said it had been 3 days, and she explained that she had already given the bird a new name while they were sleeping. He answers AZ when asked which one. He smiled and said that it was a good name, causing a surprised reaction from his interlocutor. He is surprised, and the other explains that if he accepted it, it means he likes it and there is no need to apologize. He was surprised that she immediately became a beauty after the frowning expression disappeared, and she admitted that she had become attached to them. He warns not to look at his sister or the pink-headed one, otherwise they will not leave him alone, and says that for others she is handsome, not beautiful. He was surprised and asked if he should be afraid of Mr. Jean, and he replied that she was always so trusting. He assured her that it was safe here, but she needed to be careful, and she offered to bring some soup and rest, after which he asked if he could stay. He says it's night outside, and the other person asks him to get well soon to cover his accommodation costs. She says she has to pay Mr. Jean back, and he says he didn't mean it that way. A man asked Ash if he was okay, and he responded with surprise, no. While in a tavern with other patrons, Jean noticed spirits near the people, and another man greeted Dean and offered him a drink as an apology for the inconvenience. The man said that he had served with Mr. Ash for a long time, and not introduced himself and explained that he used to be a butler and was now an adventurer. He asked if the spirits liked Dean, and he replied that they liked his younger sister Amila, and noted that it made no difference whether there were 2 of them or 3. He said that many in the guild had fainted because of the spirit, and asked not to spread the information so as not to damage the guild's reputation. He says that Amila will have to start from the lowest position and correct her character, otherwise she will not be able to work in the reception area. He explains that the spirit's pranks can be dangerous, but if they are unintentional, they will not be harshly condemned thanks to the intervention of Mr. Dean. The 3 discuss expenses and the secretary, one noting that Esh doesn't stand on ceremony, and the other saying that without Jean, the adventurers might think the pinkhead gets away with everything. He explained that he wanted to rent a house, and the other agreed to help rent a room in the hotel where he now lives to avoid the temptation to spoil her. He considers the idea that drinking is allowed from the age of 15, but it still makes him uncomfortable, and admits that it is difficult to get rid of the old mentality. He suggested that Jean spend a day with a mid-level adventurer to fill in the gaps in his experience. He explained that he was not strong, but reliable in fulfilling the guild's requests, and agreed to meet tomorrow at the same time. They warn each other not to get into trouble, and one asks Ash to stop frowning, causing him confusion. He said that they had beautiful faces, but strange personalities would definitely be drawn to them, and she timidly peeked out from around the corner. He lies in bed and thinks that in the second world he meets snow for the second time. He wished Rich good morning, noticing that it had started snowing, and was surprised along with him, holding a fluffy dog in his arms. He sips thoughtfully from his cup and notes that winter has arrived, and also remarks that slightly sour plum jam and cheese are a wonderful combination. He remembers that the last time he met her was in the mountains, holding a mug in his hand. He thinks he'll meet an adventurer today and notes that the food was delicious. Someone approached Jean to clarify yesterday's matter and the payment for the potion. He with a short tail says that he does not require immediate compensation, and another one notices with surprise that it is about this again, and the third one thinks that nothing can be done. He suggests returning to the question of life stability after arranging the house, and the other one reacts thoughtfully. The man confirmed the decision, and the other called out to Jean by raising his hand. He was introduced to Jean, who responded pleasantly and apologized for his dislike of formalities. The man called out to Dean, who replied that he understood and remembered the reliable adventurer Dean had spoken of. He hears 2 men discussing his pretty face and asking if he is sure everything will be okay. He warns not to spoil the matter, and Jean thinks that handsome men are sent to him on purpose, justifying that it is not his fault. The man agrees to fulfill the request in a normal manner, and the other two discuss the possibility that he has complexes about his appearance. He noted that his first request for an experienced adventurer to accompany him was finally fulfilled as they walked through the winter forest. Three men discuss hunting rabbits due to the demand for fur and meat, and checking the prices of meat in classified ads. He explains how the direction of the prey and the professionalism of the hunter can be determined by the tracks of grass and paws, and another one is surprised to recognize his skill. They discuss the tracks in the snow. One explains that the fox that left the straight tracks is also a demon, and the other is surprised and asks why he thinks so. He explains that a short bow is suitable for hunting normal animals, but a different arrow is needed for monsters, and he reflects on his mistakes in battle. He shoots at a fleeing monster, and another says that monsters are more fun because they attack themselves, and asks to show him how to hunt a fox. A woman thanks a pilot for a quality product, and one of the men offers an increase in the reward. He noted that the interlocutor's communication skills were also quite good, while laughter was heard. The man complimented another on his fighting style, and the other thanked him for the lesson and agreed to have a drink, despite feeling awkward about the comment about his thin arms. He rolled up his sleeve and concentrated on preparing for something against the backdrop of the night house near the mountains. He lies on the ground and promises to start a protein diet and muscle training, and the dog looks at him with bewilderment. He asked if the bath was ready, received confirmation and thanked her, surprised at its cleanliness and asking how they would carry it. He forgot about the cart, but said that he had already arranged everything and thanked for the delivery, checking that everything was in order with the cargo. He thought the ability was very convenient, said goodbye to the people and started digging the ground near the building. He happily said that he had made a bath, showing the result of his work. He turned around in surprise when he heard the knock and asked what was going on. He came to announce the move, and the other one learned with interest that the new house was nearby. He congratulated her on the move, and she explained that someone else had found the house, although she didn't say where they lived. He thinks the mood is improving and invites them in, noting that it is cold outside, and the other apologizes for disturbing them. He thanks the other for the gift, and the other replies that he should say thank you first and hands over a cup of drink. He noted that the fig pie looked delicious. He tries the baked goods and says that he has never eaten anything tastier in this city. He said it was made according to Knott's recipe, and another noted that this butler is no slouch. He asked what they had been doing before she arrived, and the other one was surprised that it was a bathroom and not a bathhouse and decided it was easier to show. He pointed to the bathtub, saying that this was it, and the other one was surprised and asked if this was true, to which they replied that hot water was poured into it. He noted that the walls were not yet dry and suggested trying it when it was ready, while another admired the beauty, saying that he had never seen anything like it. The man apologized for disturbing him, and the two young men discussed the possibility of calling Noda. The man asked if this was a bathtub, to which Jean replied that she was allowed to use it when it was ready, while someone watched silently. He nervously offered the butler a try, remembering that she was the daughter of a noble family. He breathed a sigh of relief as the man admitted he was curious, and the three men discussed the strange smell and asked to go into the kitchen. The man explained that the toilet was separated by a wall and did not smell like sewage, and he sheepishly introduced himself and asked what the workshop did. He is surprised, and Jean explains that he actually did it all himself. He asked if they had registered and demonstrated the technology in the guild, to which the other replied that they had not yet. He, freezing in the cold, cursed and tried to say something, despite the cold and snow around him. He stands by the lake and thinks that it's too cold and maybe he should have made a down jacket first instead of a futon for Ash. He decided to finish quickly and go home, touching the water with his hand while the ducks swam nearby. He takes aim and shoots his bow at the ducks, explaining that he is getting rid of the sounds so that the bird will not escape prematurely, and is happy when he hits the target. He stands by the river with a rope and thinks that all he has to do is pull it up, noticing something in the water. He noticed that the birds were drawn to the smell of blood and expressed irritation about it. He breathed a sigh of relief and admitted that he was scared while he was teleporting with the bird. There's a fire burning behind the bars and someone asks if it's too hot inside. A man with a dog warms up by the door while Jean talks about helping with repairs and discusses moving with another man. One received a housewarming gift and was surprised by the cost and lightness of a futon made from white-horned goose feathers, while another noted the difficulty of hunting these geese. He asked if the kitchen was ready and suggested we have dinner at his place, and then admitted that he felt awkward. The man explained that he was a butler and could not sit at the same table with the hostess, and the other invited the young lady to come and visit him. He says that Jean has been working hard for them, and they invite not to come with them, while the other man tries the food and comments on its delicacy. He wished him a bon appetit, and the other was surprised by the taste of the dish and asked if it was really honey with cheese, to which the old man answered in the affirmative. He noticed that Ash was eating with a scary face, but the spoon did not stop, and decided to bring her another pie, noticing that she really liked this food. He was startled when a fireball fell on a plate of food, and two men watched in amazement. He is in shock and does not understand what is happening, expressing it with the words, "K. What the hell?" He ponders perfume and temperature, deciding to clean something and get a rag, while another wonders if he is hiding his abilities from the butler. He noted thoughtfully that spirits cannot penetrate glass and metals, and another asked what to do with him next. He says he'll make Rose and Cone's favorite treats later, and then is surprised when a man addresses him. The man explained that the spoiled pie belonged to his spirit, and the young man asked to warn him in advance and offered to bring a new pie. He thinks that the butler now knows about his ability to touch spirits and admits that they are in the same boat. He moved to a port city and noted that it was quite lively there while the seller invited him to come to the counter. He reflects on magic and demonization, recalling Mashido's words and discussing gathering information about the country where his sister lives. He came to check if his sister was influencing neighboring countries and ponders the rumors about her use of magic. He ponders how to find out who has ruined the fishing grounds, while another tells how his son came back all wounded after trying to figure it out. He, with a short ponytail at the back of his head, talks about the harm of heroes and the hope for the Demon King, who will take them under his wing. He takes a bag of groceries from a merchant, thinking that his sister has not changed, and decides to buy dairy products and go home. He tastes the oyster with interest, holding it in his palm next to the plates and chopsticks on the table. He enjoys the taste of fresh oysters and says the appreciation helps him feel better about his stomach. He answered the question thoughtfully, and the dog suggested marinating the excess in oil. The young man invited the dog to play, addressing it by the name Rich. He notices that it is getting dark, turns on the light, talks to the dog and complains about the control, deciding to practice his magic before visiting the guild. Deep in the demonic forest, he proposed to begin training and created a fireball in preparation for battle. He realizes that the power is stronger than he thought and understands the need for good control while observing a strange creature surrounded by energy. 3 creatures cast magical attacks: Water Barrier, Wind Blade, and Fireball. He noted with relief that there was progress, standing against the backdrop of bushes and exhaling steam. He thoughtfully asked if he had overdone something, standing among many sleeping animals. He decided to put the light in storage and noted that it was much better this way. He opened the door and decided to look at the bulletin board to see what the popular search queries were this month. He said that they needed to go deeper into the forest and conduct an investigation. He explains to Chris that the expedition into the forest is carried out twice a year, but without finding the 3-horned ones he cannot risk it, and Chris notices a noise and talks about something suspicious in the forest. He explains that the 3-horned ones are formidable enemies and harbingers of black monsters, and Jean remembers that he heard their name somewhere. The man said that despite the stern expression on his interlocutor's face, he must understand the importance of the investigation, while the other admitted that he was a newbie and didn't make any decisions. He thinks about the blonde guy, and the other one apologizes and calls him beautiful like Twilight. He thought it was beautiful like Twilight, and another confirmed that it was an apt comparison for Sir Jean and introduced himself as Chris Eads. He greeted me awkwardly and asked not to highlight the color of his hair and eyes, and the other person thoughtfully replied, A man with long hair invites Jean to go hunting for 3-horned animals. and he is surprised to think about what they are trying to drag him into. He invites the Prince of Darkness to go with them on a hunt for the three-horned ones, shaking his hand. He was surprised that they brought him into this, and the other one reminded that they had already discussed it and hadn't found the three-horned ones. He admitted that he hadn't seen anything, but he was deeply concerned about the strange things happening in the demonic forest. He asks in surprise about intuition, and the other explains that intuition is his second self. Three men are discussing intuition and putting something off until spring, and a young man with black hair is listening to their conversation. The man explains to Jean that Mr. Chris has a spirit attached to him that gives predictions, and that his intuition has helped him in his work, although he himself does not see spirits. He speculates that the blonde has acquired some sort of sixth sense and is slightly healthier, which is why he doesn't get sunburned. The man explains that this is a three-horned hunt and that at least 2 silver ranks are needed, and the interlocutor recalls the incident with his sister and feels a duty to the guild. He discusses the need to bring in a skilled assassin of iron rank or higher to combat the two-horned, noting that he would like to attract guilds from other cities and gold rank. He noted that the atmosphere in the forest is truly frightening. He is surprised by the word overflow, and the other asks Jean to go with them to the demon forest, but he quickly refuses. He explains that he wants the other to look for the spirits in the forest without forcing them to fight, and offers to help with luggage in case of a monster attack. He says it's better to wait until spring to sort this out, and his interlocutor agrees. He reflects by the fireplace about his sister, magic, and the upcoming trip to the demonic forest, expressing dislike for his feelings. He decided to turn on the spirit vision in the demonic forest and said that it was time to check what would happen. A dark creature and a glowing animal slowly float through space, and a fairy watches them with curiosity. He notices that most of the spirits are heading home, but among them are black and tattered ones, which become smaller and smaller until they disappear. He explains that the creatures absorb other people's body parts to regenerate their own, and notes that it is not a very pleasant sight. He explained that healing doesn't work on spirits, so you need to infuse power, and he named the spirit Black One. He calls the black creatures by numbers, holding them in his hands and noting their characteristics. He wearily says that that's all for today and will continue tomorrow, reflecting on the difficulties with the spirits and his initiative. He approached the closed door of the old stone building in the bright sun. Jean greeted Dinoso, who invited him in, and the children greeted Jean joyfully, surprised by his arrival. He brought gifts with liqueur and cake, and she was happily surprised by the gifts. Jean thanks the family for the hugs and gifts, and he shyly offers something in return, noting that he gets hugs all the time. He said he became friends with the family who taught him how to make cheese, and they thanked Jean and suggested they have cake together. He offers to help with the bean harvest, and she says the cake is ready, and everyone gathers around the fireplace, discussing winter activities and tool repair. She confessed that she wanted to become Jean's wife, and he sheepishly replied that he was not going to marry, while his parents argued about permission and the future. He is surprised that he doesn't like his daughter, and the two boys happily say that they want to marry Jean and join his family. He restrains himself, but the 3 people around him hug him, and he shouts back that he can't restrain himself either. He reflects on his abnormal family, watching the company having fun, and realizes that it is time to go on reconnaissance. He reported that the Prince of Darkness had already arrived, and noted that she was also there, the child of the moon. He greets Jean, who is concerned about the newcomer, while another man advises caution and mentions bear hunting. He said thoughtfully, and the other 2 asked, "What?" in surprise. He thought the famous newcomer Ash was hunting bears, but Jean replied that he was the one who did it originally. He admitted that he hadn't been to the guild for a long time, and the other said that the guild wouldn't have let them go on a dangerous journey if things were that bad. He was surprised that he had to take the Prince of Darkness, and the other one said with a smile that now everything was clear, laughing at his intuition. He laughs and says that the spirit told him to, and she carelessly strokes the dimple on her chin. One of them asked Jean where he got the leather for the bag, and the other asked what the package on top was. He explained that he had made the leather himself and put a blanket on top, and told how to remove the belt using the buckle, and 2 listeners express doubts about the heavy weight that was in the way. He remarks that the bag is more comfortable than theirs, and she asks him not to stroke his chin so tenderly, surprised by Not's reaction. He suggested having lunch, and the others agreed, noting the good weather for the journey, and the group stopped by a fire in the forest. He cooks the soup over the fire, adding chicken, onions, and mushrooms, and says the dish is ready. He said his lunch looked delicious, and the other one said he was afraid the food would spoil because there was too much of it. He asked if everyone was stretched, another noted the tenderness, and a third explained that the meat was covered in breading and talked about the preparation of the dish. He asked what the meat was made of, and the other explained that it was fried in oil with spices, after which they decided to continue on their way. Several people are walking along a grassy path. Their feet are visible in close-up. He notices dirty boots and decides to imitate the gait of the butler, who warns about wolves and advises to take care of oneself. He thinks Chris knows his stuff and approaches his work responsibly, although he is a little annoying. Jean wonders why they chose him, but assures them that he can handle it and attacks the approaching wolves with his sword. The man warns that horned wolves are drawn to the scent of blood and that everything needs to be collected quickly, while the other one thoughtfully agrees. He said that we need to leave faster. The group is walking through the forest. One of them suggests setting up camp as far away from this place as possible, and the other agrees. The image shows a forest with dense foliage and the title of a manga chapter. He sits thoughtfully under the canopy and asks if this is enough, and then answers himself, He said he thought the other one didn't like hiking, but the other one replied that he seemed to be used to it. He explained how he made a roof and wall out of waterproof tarpaulin, while another admiringly called him the Prince of Darkness and refused to hug him. He says he survived alone on the island for almost 2 months, sitting by the fire. He noticed that they put moss for softness and said that he would do the same. He notices that everyone has gone to pick moss, which is not customary in the mountains of Japan, and 3 of them are discussing that it is a pity that it does not grow in the camp. He suggested going fishing for dinner, and Jean replied that he would make soup and dough, noting that it would be cool in the evening and hot stew would be appropriate. He was surprised and thought it was some kind of strange ritual as he watched another man clap his hands vigorously around the fire. He noticed that it had become smooth and decided to prepare the ingredients for breakfast while it was resting. A man explains that he likes the salty taste, while another wonders if there are tomatoes in this world while looking at the food being prepared. He thinks he added sun-dried tomatoes to the soup, but no one noticed, and another remarks that the soup is also very tasty. He said that she would make a great wife, and he replied not to regret that she was of the opposite sex and not to make an upset face. He asked Jean about his preferences in types of brides, and he replied that a girl should not be envious of such breasts, and noted that Mr. Dean has nice breasts. He admitted that he had difficulty communicating, and she explained that she didn't trust people because of their deception and jokes about love. A man tries to convince another that a girl's fear is a mistake, and the other explains that he has encountered different people 3 times and blames his sister for it. He remembers his sister making fun of him and then thanks the man who tells him to keep his head up. He is silent, looking at the fire, and the other one looks away thoughtfully, without saying a word. He notices that it is cold at night and someone says that she has come to relieve him, addressing him as Sir Jean. He was surprised when she offered a treat, and the other thanked her for the coat, saying it was very light and comfortable. He explained that he did it as a hobby and noted that she had returned the money for the potions, while the other wondered if she liked Florentine biscuits. He says he has met a lot of people since then and his mistrust of them has disappeared, and she hopes that their meeting had an impact on that too. He agreed, but another admitted that Ash was too straightforward and decided to leave, while the third supported him. He decided to take a little rest before tomorrow, reflecting on his sister's complete opposite and her lack of ulterior motives. The men discuss how the food here is better than in the city, and one adds that beer would go well with it while the group relaxes around the fire. He is surprised by the name of the drink. The old man describes the taste, and another man calls it red ain. He talks about the prepared bread with pâté and asks if the Prince of Darkness is going to sleep by the river, taking care of a balanced diet on the campaign. He explains that he made a steam bath out of rocks and branches, tying them into a dome and covering it with a tarp while they were fishing. He explains that you can steam in the sauna and take a dip in the river, and the other thanks him for the compliment and offers to use the sauna. He noticed that 4 men were staring at him, seemingly surprised or wary of his appearance. He asked if they wanted to join the bathhouse and received their consent if they were okay with it. He says that everyone has gone, and because it is late, they will have to sleep in the open air drying the tarpaulin. He noticed something near the water and was surprised to see a strange object floating on the surface. He stands on the bank of a river in the forest, telling that he asked his spirits not to let other spirits near him. He reflects on the fact that black spirits are becoming more common and that giving them names might attract attention. He felt refreshed after the bath, and another noted that they were moving faster today, while the third listened to their conversation with surprise. He shouts to stop when he spots a 3-horned monitor lizard on the path ahead. He explained to Jean that 3-horned monitor lizards are tenacious and to kill them you need to cut off their heads or pierce their hearts, but do not approach until Jean gives permission. He explains that the skin on a crocodile's back is stronger than its bones, and the best chance to attack is when it raises its head and exposes its throat. They decide to approach from 2 sides, preparing for an unexpected encounter with the creature in the forest. He strikes hard at the large monster, which lets out a cry of pain. He shouted to Chris and then plunged his sword into the attacking lizard, protecting his ally. 2 men discuss the work they've done, one of them noting that everything went as expected, while a 3rd man with long hair watches them. He admitted that his heart was pounding, and another confirmed that 3-horned monsters had been found in the forest, and one noted that fighting alone would not help. He wonders how much time has passed in the forest, and the other explains that hornless or one-horned monsters usually live here. He reported that the goal had been achieved and suggested going a little further to set up camp, to which the interlocutor agreed. He approached the Prince of Darkness with a request to help with the cutting, to which he agreed. He praised the other for his success while he stood with the bag, and he sat by the water washing the fish. He explains that he has practiced hunting and has his own style of butchering, answering a question from his interlocutor. He notices an increase in the number of black spirits and asks how much meat is left, and the other replies that the monitor lizard is like a chicken and can be fried. One says that you can gather asparagus while everyone is hunting, and the other warns you not to go too far as monsters avoid fire but can attack. He uses search, noticing mushrooms and an approaching fox that runs straight towards them, not afraid of fire. He explained that there was a monster fox nearby and that the smell needed to be eliminated, then showed an ointment to mask the smell and suggested hiding downwind. A man with a sword prepares to attack a wolf, while another shouts to Jean, warning him of the danger. The image shows a fox lying on the grass with its eyes swirling, as if it has passed out or is confused. He asked in surprise what it was, and the other replied that he saw a fox lying on the ground with his eyes spinning. He confirmed that Jean killed the 2-horned one, and the other called him the Prince of Darkness. He admires the success of another, who is surprised, and the 2 observers express joy that everything is all right with him. He says that this is not what worries him but another issue, and his interlocutors agree that everything will be limited to monitor lizards. He asked what they were talking about, and the other replied that monitor lizards rarely travel long distances, unlike foxes. They discussed the threat of 3-horned monsters and the possibility of the fox becoming one, noting that such creatures would quickly reach the city. He said that it was necessary to report this urgently and leave tomorrow morning, to which the interlocutor agreed. In a large cauldron, food is being fried over a fire, making a sizzling sound. They discussed the taste of the caught bird and pasta, noting that food in the countryside is better than in the city. A group of people are walking through the forest, and one of them warns that there were no incidents on the way back. The reconnaissance mission came to an end. He returned tired and was asked to report to the guild leadership. He politely asks to take his reward, and the other 2 ask what happened and agree without any problems. They discuss that he is going to prepare a bath and is waiting for them, and Jean confirms that he will come and promises to tell them about the guild's decision later. The image shows an empty courtyard with stone walls and wooden beams under the roof. He tiredly put the wood in the fireplace inside, while nearby 2 little fairies watched the fire. He explained that spirits in fireplaces can communicate between houses and asked to be informed when guests arrive at this house. He noticed that the water in the storage room was not cold, but it was unpleasant to wash in a cold room, and decided to build another house. The animal in the basket quietly said the name Rich. He happily met the dog, who replied that she was dirty and offered to play with her after her bath. He relaxes in the bath and then sits by the fireplace with the cat, thinking about having to wash 3 times, and thanks the fairy for the information. He teleports to the vault and notices that it has become warmer, deciding to refill the hot water. He apologized for the wait, another replied that it was no big deal, and the third handed over the award and thanked him. He announced that the bath was ready, to which the old man thanked him and offered to go first, while the other man responded thoughtfully. The man handed over the glass and said that the bathtub had been bought in the city of Edi, in the kingdom of Pasteur, and that delivery would take 6 months, so for now they would have to make do with a wooden bathtub. He tells the man about joining the strike force and refuses to sell the robes he wanted to just give away. He was surprised that there was another foray into the forest, and the other insisted on paying for the robes despite objections. She said she was finished. He offered to drink tea, and the other asked to rest and noted that the servant could not allow the mistress to prepare a bath. He said he was leaving, and the other asked him to take his time, noticing for the first time Ash's loose hair and nervousness. He asked if everything was okay, noticing her murderous look again, to which she thoughtfully folded her hands in front of her. She asked him if he had seen spirits in the forest, to which he replied in the affirmative. She remembers that the last time she saw something like this was when the court magician was on the rampage. He admitted that he hadn't seen people usually use this kind of magic, and she explained that spirits give magic out of sympathy or a contract, and there are 2 ways to get more of it. He reflects on how spirits are made of power and disappear when it is fully used, and asks if disintegrating spirits have experienced something similar. He explains that the transformation of a beast into a monster affects the magician and those around him, and that the black color of monsters indicates a strong resentment towards people. He asked if they could turn into demons, and she said that was quite possible. He explains that his sister can become a demon lord, and she talks about the nature of spirits and magic, warning him not to use it unnecessarily. She reflects on how he could have turned black but still remained close, and compares him to spirits. He asked her to wait a minute and then apologized for waiting while she thoughtfully held the bird on her hand. He asked not to tell the butler, and she asked with interest what kind of treat was on the tray. Someone suggested treating themselves to sweets, showing a plate with a variety of desserts. He said that it was the first time he had seen something like this, and he asked not to talk about it. He said it would be good to take a little break, and she apologized for bothering him. She thanked him for the treat and began to eat gratefully, blushing slightly. He offers her some tea. She tries the pie and admires the combination of berries and cream, and he is surprised by her courage to eat an unfamiliar dish. He explained that he was not used to comforting people, so he treated her to a treat, and she replied that she liked it and was happy. He said there was nothing wrong with that, and she admitted that she didn't think she was so easily irritated, and noticed that even AZ had cheered up. He smiled, and she confirmed his words, gently stroking the small bird on her hand. He asked if she was going into the forest again and received the answer that he was just in time, glad that she was feeling better. The man asks to make him something from fabric, promising to pay, and Jean says that he has heard about requests from others and warns that leather is better, otherwise it will be stolen. The young man explains that all silver ranks must participate in the raid, and iron ranks can earn a star by killing monsters or completing guild requests. The man explains that stars depend on rank and it is difficult to obtain a new one, and Jean asks why he is so cautious and expresses concerns about the expedition. He explains that copper ranks can participate by recommendation, and the other asks to stop tickling and apologizes. A man explains that Amidio has teamed up with a mage and will soon reach gold rank, while another man asks who Amidio is and wants to see him. He said he heard that he too could see spirits, referring to a man with dark hair. The image shows the demon forest at night with flickering lights among the trees. He decided to hunt monitor lizards to make leather backpacks for the others. He named the spirit he caught Blackie 95 and decided to catch only black spirits so that Ash wouldn't have to see them again. He heard someone call him Sir Jean and turned around against the backdrop of the village houses. He apologized for the wait, and the other thanked him for his time during their meeting on the street. He brought the bags he had made for everyone and explained that he had decided to go shopping with them, while the others said they could wait a bit. He asked if the quest had been delayed and if Amadeo had arrived, to which the other replied that it was better to do everything in advance due to the large number of adventurers. He was surprised when two thugs approached and demanded a drink, and then one of them hit him. He replies that he is fine, and the other man is surprised to notice that they have contacted the Prince of Darkness, calling them idiots. A man with a wound on his face asks to stop the fight and try to talk, while another remarks that only idiots mess with Black Bear. They discuss the idea of going out for a bite to eat at a nearby restaurant to celebrate their reunion. Several people raise wooden mugs and wish each other good health. 3 people discuss what they did after the investigation. One met with the guild, another escaped, and the third collected herbs. They discuss him looking for a new place to live and wonder if he was assigned this quest, and also wonder where Dean was. He explained that he used to live with his sister, but now lives in a hotel, leaving her under the supervision of her mother, while the other noted that nothing had changed. He explained that there was already a King of the Wolves, Balmore, and there was no point in having a similar nickname, and the other was surprised and asked about Balmore, who was called a legendary adventurer. The man tells him that Dean is missing, but his fame lives on, and Dean agrees to a keg and asks to buy him a drink until he returns. Jean agrees to return safe and sound, and the others discuss the meeting place and plans for the trip after the quest. He asked if he was flying in the same direction, and he replied that he had rented an apartment near the gates of the Demon Forest, where housing was cheaper. Jean sheepishly asks not to look at him like that while the men discuss the price increase due to the installation of modern toilets. Clouds and trees are visible against the backdrop of the mountains and sun, creating a tranquil natural scene without characters. He woke up, had breakfast and went into the forest to begin another session of catching black spirits. He ponders the cleanup team and negotiates with the local spirits to find out how their journey will go, deciding to go a little deeper into the forest. He stands in the forest and says that he is going there. He noticed a 3-horned boar rushing towards him and exclaimed in surprise. He casts the spell, Zanzankin, and delivers a powerful blow with his sword. He found some wild asparagus and decided to make a stew out of it and then share it with the butler. He asked in surprise, "Huh?" noticing an animal with a horn on its head and a protective collar walking towards him. He was surprised to notice that it was not a leopard in front of him, but rather a snow leopard. He listens in surprise to the request of the mysterious creature and reflects on the strange situation with the contract and the transformation into a black spirit. He retells that as compensation, a shrine can be made in the forest that repels monsters and demons, and asks where it is located. He mounted the deer and offered to ride, but then exclaimed when the animal moved abruptly. He asks them not to run so fast, but he doesn't have time and falls when the animals suddenly stop. He panicked and asked if it was possible to stop normally while sitting on the ground next to the 2 animals. Magyar returned and asked why they had brought the man, to which the horse remained silent. He apologizes to the dying horse and notices that its body is turning black and evaporating, while thinking about the name of the snow leopard Magyar. He says that he is going to make a contract and calls the name Magyar, but the horse refuses to make a contract with a man. He tries to persuade the horse to say its name, warning it about the magic circle, but the animal resists and throws it off. He curses in irritation, then asks the horse its name and offers to make a contract, to which it receives silent consent. He noticed that the magic had passed to someone else and sighed with relief, assuring that everything was fine. He discusses people's preferences and the location of the sanctuary, while the animals express dissatisfaction and suggest riding a deer. He says, surprised, that he would prefer a more comfortable ride on a deer named Canyum. He fell in the forest and then thanked the animals for their help, learning that thanks to the contract he would be able to pass. He heard a strange sound in the forest and asked in surprise what was happening. He is surprised that the map expands when visiting new places, and another explains that some places appeared because of a contract with the Magyar. He looks at the glass panels and reflects that the glass in Kanuma is less neat and bubbles, and the green color is reminiscent of glass floats on the seashore. He admires the red glass with gold engraving and notices that the shop sells not only dresses but also fabric materials, although he has a specific goal. He goes into a pharmacy and reflects on the development of medicine, while another explains that cocoa beans can be used to make an elixir of life, albeit bitter without sugar. One talks about the rising price and advises buying now, while another one discontentedly remarks that it is expensive. He decided not to go to where the cocoa is grown and said that he bought some spices to compare them with what he already had. He asked at a bookstore about a sale on books, and the salesperson asked whether he wanted the books with or without contents. He asked what was inside the book, and the other explained that there was an empty box and real manuscripts with illegible text due to spirits. He is surprised that there is actually a spirit sitting on the book and asks about the real-time rewriting mode. He explains that the book is written in a unique set of symbols that only its author can read. He explains that thanks to languages he can understand fictitious letters, but he has difficulty reading anagrams, and talks about books that are created specifically for magicians and sorcerers. He looks at the book with interest and asks if there is a volume with a similar cover, and the other one notes that it is interesting. He agrees to buy the book despite the high price and complex illustrations, and the other thanks him for the purchase. He thought that he had achieved his goals and the money was gone, so it was time to go home. He is sitting in a chair by the fireplace and reading a book. A dog is sleeping on the floor next to him, and the mountainous terrain is visible outside the window. He reflects on the benefits and risks of making a contract with spirits, noting that spirits come when their name is called. He explains that magicians take power from spirits and talks about the differences between spirits by observing them after giving them names. He advises to forget about the clot of light, and then justifies himself by saying that he is not guilty and has nothing to do with it. He reasons that the spirits will not listen to the one who destroyed their home while another happily eats the prepared food. He explained that in the morning people rush to work, so they only make tea and buy the rest on the street and thank them for the treat. He said that they had to go or they would be late, and the other asked them to wait, causing confusion among the two men. He received his lunch and decided to buy building materials, and the other two thanked him and left. He looks at the tiles on the table, then picks up a brick and talks to another man in the room. The dog tells Rich that a safe zone has appeared in the forest and invites him to go with it. He was delighted and said that he could set off, standing among the animals jumping around him. He and the dog watch as fluffy flying objects suddenly appear around him, causing him surprise and excitement. He explained that he was calculating the site for building a house and allowed the dog to play, warning him not to go beyond the barrier line. He tells that you can now stay with him during the day, and also mentions the rooms on the floors and Rich's resting place. He tiredly decided to take a break after several days of shopping for building materials and called Rich. There is a sandwich with salad and meat on a round bun on the table. He was surprised to see a snow leopard approaching while the dog was eating next to him at a table outside. He is surprised to notice that a leopard with a horn, a deer and even a horse have come to him. The animals ask in surprise how Mr. Rich got here, watching him with caution. He asked doubtfully, surprised by the name Mr. Rich. Two beings are discussing that someone disappeared 5 years ago, and there are rumors that he disappeared due to a failure in summoning heroes. He asked Rich if he had ever commanded boys before, and Rich wondered if he didn't remember or didn't want to remember, leaving the dog puzzled. He was surprised to see traces of Rich's former home and suggested that a wolf would feel more comfortable in the forest than in the city. He stands among the animals who say that Mr. Rich is stronger and freer than any other spirit. Two beings discuss how someone's voice can reach every corner of the world. He thinks this guy is a big fan of Rich's and decides to let him talk while he works. He asked who the Wind Apostles were and was told that they were the previous heroes and their followers. He reflects with surprise and dismay that the heroes of the past destroyed the forest and wonders if the heroes here are always so bad. He explained that they planned to weaken the impact of the frame on the forest and create means of transportation on water. He is surprised that they are talking about ships and admits that he feels uneasy about using Narrawade's resources. He apologizes and muses that Rich might hate him, then asks Magyar's dog about its strength and memory. The leopard says that Rich is great, braver, and wiser than any other spirit, while another character admits that he doesn't know all the details. He raised his hand and said that he understood everything, asking to stop. He wished him a bon appetit and began to eat the noodles with pleasure, admiring the taste of the dish. He contemplates farming and growing vegetables at home, while simultaneously building and experimenting with new plant varieties. He talks about planting vegetables and invites Rich to play, while simultaneously inquiring about the expedition's activities and expressing hope for the help of the spirits. He throws a toy to the dog, who happily runs after it, and thinks that he should ask Dinoso to make a frisbee, because he has talent. He said it was time for them to go home, but he wanted to try something today. He decided to create magic circles because he saw them in a book and wanted to try making them himself, saying it was time to get started. He ponders how to influence the ingredients with magical power and adds water with spirits to make ink. He explains that you need to put the symbols on a compass and connect them with symbols from other books to draw the desired figures. He thoughtfully asked what spirit he should try to summon. The character alternately summons fire, water, and earth, creating the corresponding creatures and rising from the ground. He asks not to get out early and not to ruin the paper, thinking about what to do, and suggests using ice. He asks for help with refrigeration of the food, thinking about making ice cream, and decides to finish what he started so as not to be distracted from drawing. He draws a fertility symbol and imbues it with magic, after which the old woman appears and says that she is now at his service. He exclaimed and held out his hand, causing magic to begin to manifest above his palm. He was surprised by the disappearance of the drawing, and the old man explained that the book was incorrect and was only suitable for summoning spirits with names. He is surprised, and she laughs and says that she finds it very funny and amusing to watch him. He was surprised by the sudden appearance of everyone, and the woman explained that he had brought a lot of good spirits, which is why it was comfortable here. He announces that everyone is here now, and various people gather around, including the boys Isha and Caliph as well as other characters. He was surprised that he could be taught, and another suggested asking about spirits instead of reading all the books. He suggests sparring, and Jean agrees, saying that it's better to fight than to sit within four walls. He fights with swords with another man, who warns him about the force of the blow. He attacks Jean, who notices the wrong move and asks what it was. He admits that he used to just try to imitate others, but he can't control his movements and looks confused. He explains that he simply copied the movements without adjusting them to his body, and another asks what he imagines his sword to be, to which he replies that he doesn't even know. He said that his sister preferred fantasy, while he and his grandmother watched historical dramas, adding that in his world, swords are no longer used. He is surprised to see Jin's new weapon, Zanzikin, begin to transform. He said with surprise that it was the same, and another man with long hair summoned the sword Kata, which hovers in front of him. He is surprised when he looks at the sword with a silver chain, and she says that it is a very rare type of weapon, a little longer and in a fantasy style. He took out a sword and said that they used such ones in his homeland, after which he took a fighting stance with the weapon in his hands. He suggested continuing, and the other enthusiastically agreed, after which they began to fight with swords. Jean noted that he could now visualize the movements more easily and thanked Wang for the praise, acknowledging that Wang's sword was unique and inimitable. He reflects on his strength while playing with a dog, and then receives a task from a woman to go to the temple of Thermisto in 7 days. He says he has 7 days to earn money for a new book, and his interlocutor notes that he has planted a lot of plants. He offered to help in exchange for a treat from the harvest, and the other was surprised that spirits with human form eat not only tasty things. He thoughtfully thinks that he wanted to buy a sword similar to Zanzikin, but he can't find a suitable one. Someone suggested choosing this particular sword, asking, "Maybe this one?" He is interested in spiritual weapons, and another explains that they are weapons possessed by the spirit, and reflects on the sword's power depending on the spirit. He asked whether the Zanzikin needed to be removed from storage, and another explained that it was enough to store it where the spirit preferred to be. The image shows a large building with many windows against a background of a sky with clouds. He put his hand on the table and said everything was fine, preparing for something important. He asked if it was worth showing them, and then said that he had been checking the punitive group frequently lately. He asked the spirits not to disturb him so he could see, and assumed that this was the same gold-ranked party led by Amadeo that the flyer had spoken of. He's afraid of missing something while he's eating, and others are discussing how he's surrounded by girls and how they heard he works with a magician. He notices that all three have spirits and wonders where the meadow got such a cute dog from, and also asks about the others. The hero asked if all five worked together, and the other explained that the butler's spirit should be next to the chin lover and the spirit of Dean. During the expedition, Jin's spirit reacted to the scent of the man's boots and began rubbing against his stubble, which surprised him. He is surprised by the strange fetishes of the spirits, and the other remarks that the Lets cannot even protest. He marvels at the battle with the monitor lizards, watching the magic of the woman with the staff and the girl, and reflects on the strength of her spirit. He suspects that this strange guy might be from the punitive group, and suddenly he attacks him with a sword. Jean suddenly pulled out a dagger and stabbed the guy, who was surprised by her ability to fight in close combat, despite her status as an archer. He suffers from possession by a black spirit, and she watches his condition with concern and understands that this is the most important thing. She is surprised by the attempted attack, and he explains that he only knows how to destroy it with a spiritual weapon or make a contract. He is shocked, thinking she is about to shoot a bow, and screams in pain after the shot. He is worried about seeing someone die for the first time and tries to collect himself, taking a deep breath at the table. He is surprised and asks why the archer did not attack the black spirit, explaining that she has a spiritual weapon, and the rabbit explains the nature of spirits and their vulnerability. She noticed that someone else had arrived and explained that different people see spirits differently, so the archer couldn't see the black spirit. He reflects on the ability to see spirits that possess people and whether others can notice this condition. He reflects on the fact that he is not obliged to solve the problem, but he believes in his own abilities, as he has learned a lot. He asks in confusion what is happening, and she replies that she herself did not understand anything, watching a group of people in a clearing. She asks for forgiveness, and others are surprised by the appearance of a stranger in a hood and ask who he is and where he came from. He said in a hood that even if he introduces himself, no one knows him. He asks the spirit of sound to change his voice to get something out of the guy, who is surprised and warns him not to pay attention to them. He is surprised that his fingers are inside another's body, and the other finds it strange and asks what he is talking about. He is the one with the hood calling for the black spirit, and the other one is confused and exclaims about the black spirit. Then he heals the wounded man lying on the ground. He woke up, and those around him were surprised, and one of them mentally reassured himself that they would not recognize him, despite Ash's intense gaze. He teleports and the other one yells at him to wait, trying to stop him. He was surprised to see three people kneeling and apologizing, and one of them was possessed by a spirit, and the archer almost killed that guy. He thinks he should ask more questions when Ash and the others return, while the other one screams in panic, asking what he's doing. He is surprised when the children ask if they can join in, and another demands that he undress, expressing displeasure. Jean screams joyfully, and two smiling guys are surprised and wave their hands, not understanding what is happening. She offers to do the laundry and asks him to change his clothes, and he says that he wanted to give her clothes and reminds her not to forget to bathe Dinoso. He is shocked and accuses Shiva of conspiracy, asking what she did so early in the morning. He told Jean that they would go bathe and dress him after the well, and he asked her not to ignore him and let him go. He reflects on life and wants changes, remembering that the Dinoso family sleeps on straw, and other farmers sleep right in barns. He sweeps the yard and thinks that the Dinoso family is cleaner than other farmers, and then another farmer admires his cleaning. He said he had done everything except the door, and she explained that Jean simply loved cleanliness, after which he thought about creating a warm family home. On the island of Thermisto, he reflects on the building that Ludera spoke of and suggests first visiting the temple, famous for its lace and silverware. He apologized and said that he was told that they had books, and then thought about it, considering what was said a revelation. He agrees a little shyly, answering the question briefly. He followed the old man as he led him through a hall with high arches and was surprised to notice light coming through the windows. He was surprised by the stone statue of Ludera, and the old man demanded that he swear not to tell anyone what they would see there. He swears, and the old man agrees with his words, turning his back to him. He was surprised by the appearance of a child with blue hair and blue eyes, and she calmly asked what happened. He decided to see what was going on, and she was holding a tray with a cup in surprise. He marvels at the child's strength of spirit, and she offers to follow him, discussing secret doors and secret passages, and wants to know how this place appeared. She handed the book to someone else and then studied it carefully at the sink. He thanked me when I told him to read the instructions to find the books he needed in that place. Jean receives the books and thinks that all the information is here, then begins to read, remembering the story of the emperor and the library's relocation due to the monster attack. He was surprised that the heroes had the same abilities as Ruth, and she showed him the book, explaining that this child had become the spirit of the library. He is surprised at how quickly he reads a book on the history of Ruff, which tells about the people who founded the kingdom of Pasa. She says that the people of Ruff received protection from spirits and created a powerful state even with a small population. 3 people listen to a woman tell a story about the destruction of a country due to a struggle for the throne and the creation of a new state with a surviving queen. He explains that when the Palo state fell, the entire royal family was killed, and then explains the differences between the 2 types of Rufus. He is surprised that they were able to restore the country by finding one of Ruff's people, and then says that he likes the library and will come here often. In the image, Jean is standing on the roof of a building and saying that you can see the whole city from here, expressing admiration for the view. He asked if she had taken a bath and she said yes, which made him think that AZ didn't like Ash being wet. He says he could boil water if she asked, and she apologizes for not being able to ask him. He thanked her for the valuable material, and she confessed that she had met a man in the forest who looked like Jean and asked his opinion. He was surprised that she saw his face, and the other thoughtfully explained that he was accompanied by spirits and caught one. It seems he is a good person. He asked if he was kind, and the other explained that he had a strange aura and the spirits were working hard under magic. He said that there was a man in the detachment with a black spirit that was becoming increasingly abnormal, and another explained that the spirit was trying to possess different people. He explains that the spirit is difficult to spot because of its aura, and wonders where the man picked up the black spirit, noting that even the sorceress Rose didn't see it. Jean talks about a war between small countries and a large-scale magical attack that gave birth to many black spirits, and the interlocutor agrees that there have already been precedents. He indignantly asked if this was a country of idiots and explained that wounded spirits usually run away rather than take revenge, so there was no point in counting on a good harvest this year. He was surprised to hear that a man who looked like Jean could be a descendant of the Ruff family, while the other said that he had no relation to them. The man thanks for the firewood and notes that even aristocrats don't have such amenities, while another asks if enough has been brought. He noted the unusual hardness and absence of the soap's animal smell, and his interlocutor suggested taking his time and soaking in the bath while he baked some goodies. He suggests making a sponge cake, and she tells him about a strange creature and an unpleasant story connected with the kingdom of Sermutus. He discusses theories and rumors, deciding to temporarily avoid contacting the guild, and then uses the base to make the dessert airy. A fairy with wings watches a slowly pouring liquid in a large bowl. A dog stands nearby, closely watching the process. He explains that he bakes slowly, constantly turning it so it doesn't burn, and the other one asks what he's cooking. He said he had made a meat pie, and she added that she had baked a sponge cake standing by the fireplace in a cozy room. He happily offered to treat himself to some as soon as the butler finished washing himself, and she asked with admiration about the sponge cake. Several people raised wooden mugs, and one of them said they had done a good job. There is a delicious piece of fried meat on the table, and someone admiringly remarks that the food looks very tasty. A man with meat in his hand happily says that he forgot how tasty beef can be, while others sit at the table and listen to him. He asked thoughtfully if they served meat pies here, while another noted that the situation was worse than they thought, despite the guild's warning. He bites into the meat and is surprised that Rose also has a gold rank, while two men watch him. He suggested returning to the conversation, and the other two said that the twilight looked wild when gnawing meat, and that it did not suit him. He thoughtfully asked if the use of terrible magic by another country was connected to the summoning of heroes in Shulm, and the interlocutor suggested a common effect of war and summoning. A man asks if they are invited to Amadeo's group, and another explains that he declined because it is none of his business and asks Chris's decision. They discuss turning down Amadeo's offer, with one admitting that he has never turned anyone down. He offers a restrained encouragement, saying that he wishes them luck, but in his thoughts you can hear someone addressing the guys. He refuses to go into the forest, explaining that he doesn't want to get into trouble, and she offers to join him in the evening. He asked if Mr. Jean was renting the house, and the man replied that he was interested in who wanted to buy it. He asked to wait a minute, and the other admitted that he had just asked in passing and agreed. He said he liked his current house and would buy it, while the other replied that the house in Fox Alley was indeed for sale. He explains that the house will be rented out to close associates after the raid, and says that few people will want to buy a house on the dangerous side of the wall. He greets his interlocutor and explains that today is his day off due to the large number of adventurers in the city. He says that Ash has gone hunting, and the other asks for information about profitable housing and is interested in renting out rooms. He explains that he doesn't want to use the common well because of the drug production, and his interlocutor suggests building a 3-story building with a store and renting out the attic. She asked in surprise if he was married, and he replied that it depended on the wife. He replied that not yet, to which the other angrily retorted that getting married after buying a house is the norm. He enthusiastically asked if his interlocutor had anyone in mind and was surprised to hear about talk of love. He said that there was no one there and that he was using all his free time to prepare for work, after which he declared the conversation about love over. He listens in surprise as another explains that Chris gives nicknames to those who see spirits, although he himself does not notice it. He reflects on how Ash never called him by his name, but constantly came up with nicknames, including Butler. He explains that Chris is a nice guy and advises asking to call him by his first name, while the other reflects on how he avoids Chris because of his noise. He reflects on Chris's talent for seeing spirits, and the other one gets worried and asks what he should do, to which the first one advises not to get nervous and not to dwell on it. He admitted that Chris was indeed capable of this, while the other was outraged that he had been deceived. He called the other a manipulator, and he replied that he would look after the gold miners and asked them not to worry. He reflected on the difference in life experience and attempts to grow a beard, and the other suggested continuing. He explained that he tended the garden, gave names to spirits, and worked with Ash on a cure for the yellow spot epidemic, which caused a stir in the guild. He sits by the fireplace and thinks that he still has a lot to do, and the house in Fox End will need repairs after the sewer installation. He explained to the dog that he first had to pretend to be rough while strike teams from different cities were hunting in the forest. He explains that he intentionally wanders through the forest disguised as a rough and spreads information about himself. He hides in the bushes and notices a 2-horned wolf and a 3-horned badger, suspecting that he is facing adventurers from the citadel. The image shows a flying owl and several bats, accompanied by thoughts about them. He notices a bear with fear and muses that the forest is overrun with monsters, and the hunters have switched places with their targets. He is thinking about Miss Kana's concerns about the rare research groups when suddenly the creature attacks. He turned around abruptly, and the 3 with swords in their hands reacted in surprise to his appearance. He pretends to be Rum in a cloak while the other 2 are busy with potions and reading, and the injured animals lie nearby. He called loudly to Dvoretsky and said that he needed a haircut, apologizing to those gathered for disturbing him. He explained that he wanted to get a haircut from the butler, but he refused, and another offered to lend him money, which caused confusion. He explains that he doesn't like getting his hair cut at the barbershop and doesn't take care of it, while the other one notes its beauty and considers haircuts a waste. A man advises Jean not to cut his hair, and he, in turn, thinks about cutting it, and is surprised that he knew about his intentions. He wonders if they have known each other for long and how insightful his interlocutor is. The man suggested hiring a servant, to which he sarcastically replied that it was just for washing and drying his hair. Two of them greet their friends joyfully. The other praises them for a completed task, and Jean asks for a barrel of wine, noting the noisy company. He explained that ordinary hangers-on meant little, and he had learned about the appearance of 4 heroes, and it was not in vain that he had refused. He is surprised that his sister and her friends are not the only heroes, and reflects on the fact that the gods did not interfere in the affairs of the summoned. He muses that heroes usually start with soft abilities, but these 4 seem to ignore that rule, and he heard that fewer and fewer people in the West are seeing spirits. He asked if they had been warned. Another asked to control the pressure, while a third noted that the heroes and their surroundings were always surrounded by mysteries. He says to stop the gloomy talk, while another notes that the risk of overflow has come earlier than expected, and the magic has exceeded forecasts. A friend suggests a competition to Jean to see who can drink the most, to which he asks in surprise why him, and a third one remarks that it wouldn't be rude. He asks Ash to stop and take pity on the young lady and his butler. 2 tired people are sleeping at the table. One of them quietly says, He was surprised by the resistance to alcohol, and another noted that the butler refused to play, but Let's decided to participate and was already leaning over. He says he'll take her home, and the other asks him to drive Ms. Ash while he cleans up. He, holding a glass, remains thoughtfully silent, and the other asks if she is drunk and inquires if she can walk on her own, to which she replies that she is fine. He called out to Jean, who walked away thoughtfully, saying that perhaps he should have stayed instead of the butler. He asked what it was, and Jean quietly said his name, looking at the other man with slight embarrassment. He said thoughtfully, and the other one asked in surprise what meant. Someone calls Jean a brothel, to which he asks what exactly they mean. He advises not to get drunk in public places in the future, and the other one is surprised by his hair and doesn't understand what's going on. He with the short tail asked in surprise, and the other one thoughtfully answered, He thoughtfully asked if everything was okay with the drunks, while kneading dough on the table. He asked if Ash was okay, and Ash looked ill and thought he could use a hangover cure. He offered Jean bread and sausages, who replied that his stomach was upset and asked if he could use the kitchen. He asked what the drink was and learned it was a syrup made from ginger and citrus, after which he noted its strong yet sweet taste. He advises drinking a lot of water and resting to help his stomach, and she thanks him and apologizes for the trouble. He said he would go home, but she reminded him of her promise to take him to the branch of the spirit and expressed a desire to thank him for his troubles. He remembered that she wanted to give her a tour and said that he had no urgent business, to which the man agreed. The next day he asked her if she was feeling better today, and she said she was much better, and he noticed that Ash's face was the same. He said he went into the spirit branch to get water for potions, and she confirmed that this was the place where the spirit of Dean's sister was removed. He noted that spirits are usually located in a prominent place in the square, and another responded that this is the case in all cities, not just in Kanuma. He was surprised to learn that all water is a spirit branch, which is actually a branch of the king's branch. He explains that the place with the branch is called the spirit branch, while the other reflects that Azir does not have a king's branch and has not yet deeply studied the spirit branches. He reflects on the name of the country of Azir and understands that the king's branch is the sacred tree of spirits, and the other explains that good spirits gather in it. The voice explains that the spirit branch is difficult to attain and maintain, and violating it will deprive one of the king branch and the spirit branch. He explains that Cermutus, Pasteur, and Marina are the 3 countries that have successfully inherited the king's branch. He thinks about the country where his sister lives and how the fake Kanuma branch works. He explains that the fake branch creates a magical field, and she smiles and asks who the local employee is. He was surprised to notice that magical stones were being thrown into the water. He reflects on the summoning of spirits and explains that the magical power and element of the stone influence the spirits, and the pseudo-branch allows the magic to disperse into the air. He noticed the appearance of the first spirit, which landed next to him at the well. A genie listens to another man explain the properties of perfume and its uses while a little fairy happily splashes water. He thoughtfully suggested coming here again, and she thanked him in return. He was surprised to see a bird on the head of another who tried to stop it, but the bird fell into the water, causing confusion to both of them. The image shows the facade of a large house against a backdrop of trees and sky. He is happy with the successfully baked dish and says that everything is growing well in the garden too. He examines the plant and says that artificial pollination is too delicate a job for him, and also asks where Rich is. He was surprised to see Rich sniffing onions, and she explained that Rich was not a dog and onions were bad for him, raising questions about Rich and Looter's past. He thinks he has his own thoughts about the puppy's appearance, watching him with a thoughtful expression. He noticed some good vegetables, and an old woman and a boy in hoods quietly said something to each other. He waters the garden, and she thanks him, noticing that where the fire had fallen, the harvest had ripened. He says with surprise that with this trio he feels like he is in a fairy tale. He is happy that the ban on vegetables has been lifted, watching a woman and a cat, while another boy and an elderly woman discuss the taste of vegetables. He asked if Lutera decided to try the onion because of Rich, and she replied that the taste was sweet. The image shows a building with multiple roofs and windows, with no visible characters or dialogue. He says he's on his way, then greets and thanks him for his help, and the other man apologizes for the delay and explains that he was painting 2 houses. After the purchase, he handed over control to a butler who will vet everyone who wants to become Ash's neighbors. The man is surprised by the presence of a bathroom and a normal toilet, and Jean is outraged by the openness in their world and explains that her younger brother can send people for her. He sternly said that to live here you need to follow the rules of hygiene, and the other one was surprised by the appearance of a bed. He suddenly sat on the edge of the table, expressing surprise and tension in the room. He explains that the basement is a storage room and asks not to forget to air the straw bedding, and the other thanks him for the information. He is glad that everyone is happy, and the others are looking forward to dinner and praise Jean for the delicious food. He said with a smile that the food looked delicious, looking at the prepared dishes on the table. He suggests adding more maple syrup, discussing its rarity and connection to the walled city at a table with 2 other men. He's contemplating his food preferences, and another one warns him with a smile to stop or he'll get sick, and admits he wouldn't mind a second helping. She screams for her brother to be left alone, and tries to protect him while 2 men demand that she be quiet and not interfere. He hides behind a tree and remains silent, visibly worried. He is surprised when 2 children happily hug Jean and call him brother, and in the distance someone asks what is going on here. He asked what happened, and she explained that Dad had been talking to the people, after which they had run away, and the children confirmed that they understood the situation. He reflects on the difficulties of communicating with twins at the same time, noticing that his second twin brother, Vac, is nearby. He noted with a grin that the king of wolves, Balmore, turned out to be a weakling. He thought about it when he heard the name Balmore and heard that there was already a wolf king, Balmore, so there was no point in having a similar nickname. She screams, "Daddy!" in panic, trying to stop the approaching man, who falls heavily to the ground. He unexpectedly parries the blow, and the 2 are surprised by the appearance of a new opponent, who says with a smile that they are out of luck. She deftly parried the attack of the man, who screamed in despair in pain. He is surprised by the strength and actions of the girl with the curved sword. Jean quickly attacks with her sword, but he grabs her hand and stops her, after which she stands among the defeated enemies, watching the blood on the ground. He is shocked and asks why she is so strong, expressing surprise and bewilderment. He is surprised that he was quickly stabbed in the stomach while lying on the ground. He is surprised that she actually did it and confirms that he saw it with his own eyes. The children joyfully exclaimed, "Mom, Dad," and she smiled and extended her arms towards them. She hugged the 2 of them, and one of them said that he had a spare potion and he should have given it to her earlier. He apologized for dragging him into this, and he replied that his face was terribly pale and it wasn't on purpose. He thinks he's seeing death for the second time, noticing that his wife and children are doing well after the attack. He doubts his victory, and she shows amazing determination, attacking with a sword. He thinks that due to the situation he has forgotten about magic, and the interlocutor notices his absent-mindedness, trying to attract attention to the conversation. He explains that after gaining the storage skill they are being followed, and another asks if they are packing because of a difficult situation. He said that they would go to Canaan because they were tired of running, and Jean reacted with surprise to this news. He asked why Canaan, and the other replied that he and Shiva were famous adventurers and chose this place because of the weak power of the aristocracy and the church. He tells that Shiva was from a noble family, they ran away and became adventurers, and the other one is surprised how she agreed to this. He explains that adventurers operate in the open and wants the children to be able to take care of themselves if something happens to them. One says he wants to broaden the children's horizons, while the other replies that there is nothing to do here except farming and hunting. He promised to pay if he could, and the other one replied not to worry and understood the situation. He explains the plan to divide the money into bags for the children to hire adventurers, and the woman is interested in the potion and offers to help while the other one cleans the street. She apologized for what happened and asked Jean if it surprised him, and he thought it was logical not to leave any evidence. He began to speak with embarrassment, trying to explain something. He was surprised, and she admitted that she was a little surprised. Then he offered to take care of the food and help the children get ready, and also to divide the food into portions for convenience. She heard a noise and turned around to find the source of the sound. She laughs and thanks Jean for something. He suggested they pounce on the food, and the three children responded with admiration, and she lowered her head in emotion, receiving support. He consoles the girl, saying that they will meet again, while the others discuss plans to settle in Kanuma and then go to the dungeon. He asked what happened when he heard that it wouldn't fit anymore, and the other one explained that the storage was full and he was going to check how it worked. He was surprised when the squirrel suddenly grabbed his clothes and wondered if it was the spirit of the vault. He offered to accompany them, and the other replied that it was a good opportunity to travel with the whole family and asked if he was going to Canaan. He says that he understands the strength of the interlocutor, but prefers to cope on his own, and she reminds that in the end they are friends, and they agree that they have already been late. He calls out loudly to Dinaso and advises him to go to Fox's End when he gets to Kanuma. Jean heard the farewell and promised to meet in Kanuma, watching as the group rode away on horseback. He agreed with Dinaso and admitted that his cheats were completely out of place here. He said hopefully that he would provide delicious food and a hot bath for the guests in Kanuma and looked forward to meeting them. He reflects on the ancient structure on top of the abandoned city and remembers that he met many monsters along the way. He explains that they are the descendants of spirits who entered into beetles to survive, and these spirits are black spirits oppressed by the fire people. Insects say that they ate the brains of stupid people who came to their land and gained knowledge without feeling pain. He says with a smile that he will exterminate them, and the interlocutor notes that he is not like everyone else and looks like a sage. He asked if they had a leader, and the other replied that they had nothing to eat now and that this was their last meal for a long time. He explains that they are not just parts but a single whole and asks not to attack people, apologizing for the need to conclude a contract. He explains that he does not prohibit defending oneself when threatened, but does not oblige one to help others if they die separately. He speculates that the monsters will regenerate and asks to share magic if he sees one. He notices that his hunger is weakening and there is no longer a need to eat people, which he finds curious. He reflects on his freedom skill and doubts whether it was worth taking the contract, thinking about his future hunting lifestyle. He asked in surprise if it was really almost impossible to find a house with furniture now, and was told that it was a real savior. They discussed the amenities of the house, noting that the bed and ample storage are great. He said that Dina and Chris were the new tenants, and she said that was to be expected. He asks another to look after his friend's family, but the other is surprised and explains that he doesn't like the people his sister is friends with. He is embarrassed when another thanks him and promises to show him the city, and a third offers to leave the third floor free. He said the area was uninviting and there was little to do, and she replied that there was a family with children and they would probably want to stay for the sake of making new friends. He said 3 gold-ranked patty people had decided to stay near the city center, and many wanted to live in safer central areas. He asked the butler with a grin what he was going to do with the house after hearing the word liberate. He asks if the city really doesn't have a rule limiting people to buying 2 houses, and the man listens intently. A month and a half had passed since Dinoso's family had left for Canaan, and he was busy renovating his new house. He pensively drinks from a mug and reflects on why he is constantly busy with repairs, while visiting the library and talking with Ash. He knocked on the door and thought he hoped the Dinoso family liked their new home, then asked if anyone was home. He greeted her warmly and explained that a friend had referred him, addressing a man with short dark hair. He raised his hand in a friendly manner and said, "Yo." He asks when they met, and she offers to give a fictitious date and asks not to tell anyone the real one. He explains that he baked pinksos and small pies made from marinated tomatoes and mozzarella, showing the finished dish on a skewer. He noticed the return and said that they were back. He exclaimed in surprise when he heard the name Shadow Wolf, and the other one replied pleasantly that he had just finished and asked if they knew each other. He thanks for the help and reflects on the butler's past, recalling how their meeting began at the beginning of his journey. He asks in surprise if Dinoso is Balmora, and the man explains that he is a wolf king with a gold-ranked adventurer. The man says he gave himself the name, and another remarks that the Duke actually attached the spirit, causing surprise in the third. He said the neighbors were problematic, but the house was too nice to pass up, and asked to take care of them. She bangs her fist on the wall, and he reacts to her actions with surprise. They discuss how her voice sounds different because it is hollow and that there is a draft coming through the crack. The man explains that the wind is coming from some kind of hole, since there are no cracks in the house, and no repairs have been made to the attic. Jean notices the passage is closing and demands an explanation, while another man denies any involvement and a third scolds him for his public actions. He is asked what he is hiding, and he explains that he is afraid of attracting the attention of unpleasant people because of his abilities. Jean explains his peculiarity, because of which people quickly lose interest in him, and the others discuss why the guild does not talk about him and avoids spirits. He said with relief that there were too many people around him who saw spirits and haunted him, and replied that no. He happily announced that he had returned home, and the dog was praised for its cute appearance regardless of the time of day. He thinks Rich is the cutest of the spirits and confirms this by petting the dog sitting in front of him. She asked Rich if he would mind following her into the world. The moment of Rin's debut arrived in front of everyone, and someone admiringly noted that he was an adorable puppy. He and she talk shyly to each other, surrounded by flowers and hearts. A man gently calls a puppy to him, who happily runs towards him. He warned that there would be no touching, causing fear in the other man. He worries about the words he said. Others discuss the situation with the spirit and try to calm him down. The man explains that the puppy is a high-level spirit, and the other is surprised that Rich has always been around and is considered strong despite his fragility. He says Rich doesn't like crowded places, while the other agrees that taking him out in public would cause a stir. He asks which spirit to take with him, and another expresses a desire to pet the animal, while the two discuss whether their presence is a problem and whether to return Azu. He explained that it was his decision to invite him and added that AZ would keep an eye on the other person to make him feel more at ease. Chris promises to do everything possible for the sake of trust, and the other man talks about fire spirits and a dragon watching over Dinoso. He asked if it was time to introduce himself, after which the other explained that the man's name was Dinoso, who was indignant at not being called a weirdo. He asked if the other man was Balmor, to which he confirmed, and the other was surprised and reminded him of the disappearance of the Wolf King in the dungeon. He introduced himself as Dean and said he was glad to meet him, and the other admitted that it was a great honor for him to meet a legend like him. He said Dean was acting strangely, and the other one sharply demanded silence, explaining that it was Balmor. Two men discuss Balmor's fame, while a third offers food and says that for him, Dinoso is simply a loving husband and father. The man warned the other not to walk with a spirit, after which they discuss the guild's turbulent days ahead, and one is surprised to learn that someone has children. One says Dean's behavior is annoying, while the other notes that he has wonderful children and a good family, which makes one envious of the warmth of their relationship. He said that Balmora and Shiva would be fine, but they needed to be kept an eye on them so that the children wouldn't bother them, and they agreed that it was a wonderful idea. He politely asked them for help and promised to be grateful, bowing with the toy in his hands in front of the three men. He assures that the trio will do a better job and asks not to worry, leaving the matter to them, after which he agrees. Jean agreed to help with meal preparations when asked. He doubts that it is okay to treat powerful spirits like ordinary animals, holding them in your arms and rolling your hands around. The head's inscription is shown above the building, and in the speech bubble someone is laughing and promising to try to be more restrained. On the street of a medieval town, people are walking along the road, and someone exclaims, "Let's!" He inquires whether magical steel can be processed like ordinary iron, and is told that the metal becomes stronger if the furnace is blessed by a fire spirit. He said he decided to do it all himself, and the other acknowledged his skill, but asked if he had the necessary equipment. He happily announced that he had completed his preparations and was ready to begin testing the fire spirits, asking them for help. He watches with amazement the sparks that appear when working with metal and a hammer. He is surprised by the sparks and asks if he will help, who in turn thanks everyone for their help. This is his first time working with a large piece and he is afraid he won't be able to handle it, but thanks to the help of the spirits he is confident that he will succeed. He noticed the unusual color of the tip of the sword and decided to try it out, while warning the dog to stay safe. He is surprised by the magical effect of the sword, then offers wine and sweets as a token of apology, and the two men doubt the sincerity of his actions. He treats her to the same goodies he brought earlier, and she admires how delicious it is. Jean is glad that the eclairs were to his liking, but he silently looks away without answering. He smiles nervously, and he looks at him with irritation, leaning on his hand, in a tense atmosphere at the table with a teapot and a cup. He said that he was mentally prepared and allowed the sword to be shown, and the other agreed with this. He said everything was fine and made a sharp movement with his hand. He concentrates on releasing magical energy from his hand, causing surprise among the two watching men. Jean confidently says that he covered everything up correctly, and the old man asks not to melt down the masterpiece, noting the excellent work. He asked if the other could take the wind spirit, but he refused, explaining that he did not have a fire spirit to match. He says thoughtfully that one shouldn't part with a sword that's hard to get easily, and asks what it's made of and how much it might cost. The man explains the features of the swords, and Jean says that he wants to live in comfort, after which he is called in. He exclaimed in surprise upon recognizing Balmor and quickly greeted him before hurrying away. He said hello, causing tension among the other two men who looked at him warily. Two men try to negotiate, one thanks for the food and enjoys trying it, despite the third's bewilderment. He spits out the sweet in surprise and thinks that it costs as much as a whole house. He is surprised by the high cost of strawberries, while another explains their value and suggests making more. He nervously admitted that he was currently having money problems, and the other assured that there was no need to worry about him. He asks if this is okay, and the other replies that he received the magic steel from him and will start with Ash and Shiva, thinking about choosing an element and spirit for the sword. He works intently with tools, making a metal product, and seems pleased with the result. He thanks Lady for her help and says that thanks to her he now has a comfortable bed, and she replies that she is always happy to help. He asked with a smile what he liked, and the other one answered that he needed to go and bring the note, causing surprise and bewilderment in the third one. A man explains that he bought a red glass and that the things in the house don't count, while another man notes that the glass is cloudier and suggests keeping them out of sight. He offers to go with the children to chase rabbits, and the other one doubts that he can help and considers himself a burden, but agrees not to refuse. He thoughtfully explained that a harsh educational plan had been developed for the children, with a dungeon and mountains covered in eternal snow. A man talks about the resilience of children, and Jean and her two children react joyfully to his words. He greets everyone and asks them to make themselves at home, while another man reacts dubiously to the compliment, remembering the knives he forged for Nat and Shiva. She invites Jean to join her for dinner, and he says he's completely relying on her, and the children are delighted to finally get to try venison. He reacts with fear to the request not to cut the meat, holding a shiny knife in his hands and doubting what is happening. She happily says that the children are waiting, and two men argue about who should cut the meat, and the girl warns that the father will never agree. He notices the children playing with their father again and then suggests going horseback riding, surprised at his own idea. He says that if you can stay on a deer, you can do it on a horse, and another one says that he once rode a deer but that doesn't count. He offers to go to the stables to get the horse, and the other two agree, noting that the load on the horse will be small. He assures that the path through the forest is familiar to horses, and offers to join, promising wine, and the other agrees to go, but only if he survives. He said that she needs to learn to ride a horse, and when the list of participants is confirmed, it is worth booking horses immediately. One can be taken tomorrow for training. Jean resolutely replies that he will try, despite the warning about possible blisters from riding on one horse. He complained that it was some kind of hellish torture and harder than hunting monsters. He was surprised by the number of horses, and another explained that some of them were bred for transporting goods. He noted that Ash and Nyut decided to help and joined them, and another man praised the horse's keen eye and magnificent coloring. A man is discussing the choice of a warhorse for a forest road, but he is hesitant due to the cost of renting and the inability to saddle the horse. He watches in surprise as the horse suddenly bites his head, and two men nearby react to this event. The man asks for forgiveness, and the three guys explain that their horse is stubborn and constantly runs away, which is why he ended up with them. He said that Jean was popular with all sorts of creatures, and the cry of, "Catch him!" was heard in response. He refuses to be with his beloved wild horse, and another offers to try a ride, warning about the possible consequences. He asked what stirrups were and was surprised that someone was riding without them, and the man offered to buy stirrups. He reflects that stirrups seem shameful to some riders, comparing them to the extra wheels on a bicycle.